Looking down from above, one would discover that the walls of wind had already formed a yellow barrier that enshrouded the entire desert within it. Xiao Ming sat down with his legs crossed in the distance, then closed his eyes as he began focusing on controlling the scroll before him. Within the golden pagoda, the scene being depicted on the light screen had also transitioned into a yellow sandstorm, making it impossible to see anything else. Mistress Ling Yun's brows furrowed slightly upon seeing this, and she said, "Brother Yu, the treasure fellow Taoist Xiao Ming is using is the yellow wind scroll of the blood-bone sect, right? I've heard that this treasure is ranked quite highly even among the profound heavenly treasures of the spirit realm. The fact that it's concealed the view of even this sky-appraising mirror is a clear testament to its powers. However, isn't it a little too early to be using this treasure? Isn't fellow Taoist Xiao Ming being too cautious?" That is indeed the vastly renowned Yellow Wind Scroll. This scroll is normally worshipped in the Heritage Hall of the Blood-Bone Sect, and only when facing powerful enemies would the Grand Elders bring out this treasure before entrusting it to one of them to face the enemy. The treasure has actually already been set up in advance. This entire desert was actually manifested by this scroll, and it's only being officially activated now. As for whether fellow Taoist Zio is being too cautious, I think it's a good idea that he's activated the treasure so decisively. After all, with that man's fearsome power, I think both the Heaven and Earth Extreme Formation and Yellow Wind Scroll are required to truly ensure that we've trapped him. What do you think, Brother Bai? Oh, you don't look so good, Brother Bai. Is there something on your mind? The crimson-robed man asked as he took in the expression on Bai Ying's face. At this moment, Bai Ying was staring intently at the light screen with an extremely grim expression, and only after hearing the crimson-robed man's words did he withdraw his gaze and force a smile onto his own face. I don't know why, but for some reason I was struck by a bone-chilling sensation after witnessing that man's appearance. Oh, this is not something to be ignored. At our level, we're able to sense certain impending perils. Fellow Taoist Mistress Ling Yun, are you two getting the same premonition? The crimson-robed man hurriedly asked as he turned to the other two people present. I haven't. Me neither. Could it be that your premonition was incorrect, Brother Bai? The man in the scholar's robe asked with a faint smile. Regardless of whether my premonition is correct or not, I don't plan to stay here any longer. I'm going to return to the trade guild right away. Regardless of the outcome of the battle, just send a message to our trade guild, Brother Yu. Much to everyone's surprise, Bai Ying was suddenly taking his leave. Haha, aren't you allowing yourself to be swayed by groundless fears, Brother Bai? Even if some kind of peril really were about to arise, what could possibly happen with the four of us here? Why don't you wait until the battle concludes before? Right at this moment, the crimson-robed man's words were abruptly cut off as the scene on the light screen suddenly began to glow with scintillating light, and countless streaks of golden light pierced through the wind barrier, illuminating the entire light screen into a bright golden color. The sky-appraising mirror is about to explode, the crimson-robed man exclaimed as his expression changed drastically. Immediately thereafter, the light screen shuddered before exploding into a ball of golden light, sending shockwaves surging outward in all directions. The four Grand Ascension stage beings immediately adopted defensive measures to nullify the oncoming shockwaves, but all of their expressions had darkened significantly as they cast their gaze toward the spot where the light screen had once been. Only a shattered mirror remained there now, and Mistress Ling Yun asked, "What happened? Why did the sky-appraising mirror suddenly explode? Brother Yu, you refined the treasure, so surely you know what happened." The fact that the sky-appraising mirror has exploded even when it's so far away from the battle indicates that something really has gone wrong, the crimson-robed man replied, but it wasn't a direct response to the question being raised. He had obtained this treasure at a very high price, and it could allow him to watch over an area from countless kilometers away, making it a very useful treasure. As such, he was naturally sorely lamenting its sudden destruction. Judging from the scenes that unfolded right before the sky-appraising mirror's destruction, it seems that a burst of power that was well beyond the Yellow Wind Scroll's tolerance limit had erupted within it to result in this. Could it be that fellow Taoist Bai Ying's premonition was correct? The man in the scholar's robes mused with tightly furrowed brows. The Yellow Wind Scroll is a profound heavenly treasure, and it's being assisted by the Heaven and Earth Extreme Formations and 12 Grand Ascension Stage beings. What kind of ability could that man have unleashed to overwhelm the scroll like this? Mistress Ling Yun murmured to herself. As for Bai Ying, he remained silent, but his expression had darkened even further. It's all right, I'll send a message to ask fellow Taoist Zio Ming exactly what's happened, the crimson-robed man said as his expression eased slightly. Thus, he flipped a hand over to produce a pristine white formation plate, which he quickly cast a few incantation seals into, and a panel of silver runes appeared on its surface before vanishing in a flash. After that, the crimson-robed man stared intently at the formation plate, waiting for a response. However, a full 15 minutes passed by, and the formation plate still displayed no reaction. The crimson-robed man's expression had gradually darkened further and further, and he finally withdrew the object as he said, "It looks like something really has gone wrong. Fellow Taoist Zio Ming is on the edge of the desert, yet even he can't be contacted. In that case, we'll have to make some preparations. If all of our fellow Taoists have fallen, then there's a very good chance that that man will come after us next. After all, fellow Taoist Bai Ying was struck by a premonition at the sight of that man." The man in the scholar's robe sighed in a grim manner. "Are you still planning to leave now, fellow Taoist Bai Ying?" the crimson-robed man asked as he turned toward Bai Ying. "No. If this man is destined to be my downfall, then I can't avoid him forever. Only by facing this tribulation head-on and transcending it will I have a chance at survival," Bai Ying replied as a decisive look flashed through his eyes. "Good. Even though we're only 4 people, there are 100,000 disciples and powerful formations in this city that we can make use of, so we can still put up a fight. I'm sure that man wouldn't have been able to emerge from that battle unscathed," the crimson-robed man said. Patriarch He and Mistress Ling Yun were also aware that this wasn't the time to flee on their own. If they chose to do so, it was quite possible that their enemy could target them one by one, thereby placing them in even greater peril. Of course, the main reason behind their decision to stay was still their confidence in their own abilities. Even though they were also Grand Ascension stage beings, they were far more powerful than the 12 Grand Ascension stage beings assembled in the trap. With their powers combined, they would have also been able to kill those 12 Grand Ascension stage beings with ease. Thus, the 4 of them quickly left the hall and began to issue a series of orders to their disciples. Meanwhile, the desert had completely transformed into a world of golden flames. A series of fiery golden mountains that were over 10,000 feet tall had emerged on the ground below, tearing the entire super formation apart and releasing fiery golden clouds up into the sky. At the foot of the fiery mountains were piles of charred corpses, and the light formation in the sky had been sealed within a layer of blue glacial ice, rendering it completely immobilized. At the center of the fiery, golden mountains stood a golden giant that was over 10,000 feet tall. The giant had golden spirit patterns all over its body, and it was completely identical in appearance to Ma Liang, except one of its eyes was burning with scorching golden flames, while the other one was emanating blue glacial chi. The giant was holding a giant crimson toad in an outstretched hand. Half of the toad's body had already been torn apart, and its aura was extremely feeble, indicating that it was on the brink of death. The giant's other hand was pressed over what remained of the toad's head, from within which threads of golden light were flying out incessantly. It seemed that the golden giant was searching for something in the toad's memories. Moments later, the golden giant harumphed coldly to himself. "It's rather impressive that he was able to seal away most of his soul and make it inaccessible to me, but the memories that I've managed to see are already enough. So all of the most powerful beings on the Blood Sky continent from the Blood Dao sects and the He Lion Trade Guild are gathered together. That makes things very convenient for me. I won't have to go around picking them off one by one in the future." As soon as its voice trailed off, bolts of purplish golden lightning erupted around the golden giant amid a rumbling thunderclap, then transformed into countless purplish golden chains that vanished into the giant's body in a flash. The golden giant gave a muffled groan, and the crimson toad in its grasp was instantly incinerated into ashes by a burst of golden flames, following which the giant rapidly reverted back to its human form as the black-robed young man. Ma Liang then threw up a couple of mouthfuls of golden blood, and his face paled even further. At the same time, the fiery golden mountains down below vanished as if they had been nothing more than mere illusions. Ma Liang laid a hand onto the top of his own head, and a golden talisman flew out before landing in his grasp in a flash. As expected, unleashing my full transformation and spirit domain has been quite taxing on me. Thankfully, I've benefited immensely from the blood sacrifices I performed, and I have this golden substitution immortal talisman bestowed upon me by Master. Otherwise, I would have been crushed by the power of this realm in the instant I underwent my transformation. This talisman will be able to support my transformation and spirit domain on 2 more occasions, and that'll definitely be enough for me to wipe out all these ants. With these fools setting an example, I'm sure no one else in this entire spirit realm would dare to oppose me. Having said that, those 2 ants were quite quick to react. They fled as soon as I underwent my transformation. However, with the true spirit seeds I planted on their bodies, there's no way they can truly get away from me, Ma Liang chuckled coldly. Chapter 2392, Chance Encounter. Half a day later, an epic battle that lasted close to a day, and a night took place at the giant city where Bai Ying and the others were situated. Everything in a radius of tens of thousands of kilometers of the battle was reduced to ashes, and several days later, a piece of astonishing news began to spread. All of the Grand Ascension stage beings assembled to hunt down the culprit behind the blood sacrifices had been slain in battle, with the only exception being Mistress Ling Yun of the Myriad Curse Mountain. However, even she was severely wounded, to the extent that she had almost reverted back to the body integration stage. As soon as she returned to the Myriad Curse Mountain, she immediately activated all of the restrictions on the mountain and declared that the mountain would be closed to the entire continent for 10,000 years. As a result, the entire Blood Sky continent was in a state of panic, and the other major powers and the Grand Ascension stage beings within those powers were all at a loss for what to do. Shortly thereafter, a medium-sized nation and several nearby sects were slaughtered as part of another blood sacrifice. However, Han Li was oblivious to all of this. At this point, he had already teleported to an island that was quite far away from the Blood Sky continent, then departed from the island with Zhu Guor and Patriarch Hua Shi on the Ink Spirit Holy Ark before traveling into the ocean. There were far more powerful beasts in the sea than on land, and some of them were quite formidable even in the eyes of Grand Ascension stage beings. However, the powerful puppets on the Ink Spirit Holy Ark were enough to take care of most sea beasts that dared to attack the Ark. Occasionally, they would encounter a particularly powerful sea beast, but all of them promptly fled upon witnessing Han Li's displays of power. Half a year flew by, and at this point, the giant ark had traveled an immeasurable distance through the ocean. On this day, just as the giant ark was flying along at a low altitude, an earth-shattering boom suddenly rang out up ahead, accompanied by a burst of violent energy fluctuations. Patriarch Hua Shi was standing at the front of the ark, controlling the direction of its flight, and his expression immediately changed drastically upon sensing these powerful energy fluctuations. He hurriedly flew into the cabin of the ark, and moments later, Han Li emerged from the cabin in an unhurried manner with Zhu Guor and Patriarch Hua Shi trailing along behind him. "You're saying there are Grand Ascension stage beings battling up ahead?" Indeed, energy fluctuations of this level of power can only arise from battles between Grand Ascension stage beings. Fly the ark in that direction. I want to see what's happening over there, Han Li instructed as he cast his gaze into the distance through narrowed eyes. "Yes, Master Han." Patriarch Hua Shi immediately did as he was told, and the Ink Spirit Holy Ark shuddered slightly before flying toward a different direction at several times its original speed. As the ark flew onward, the energy fluctuations and explosions up ahead became more and more violent. Finally, a small island appeared up ahead, and balls of light were flashing incessantly above the island, releasing fearsome energy fluctuations that were crushing the nearby sea level down by over 100 feet. As for the island, it had been completely flattened, and every landmark on it had been razed to the ground, giving it an extremely flat and smooth appearance. Han Li peered into the distance through narrowed eyes, and quickly ascertained the situation that was unfolding up ahead. Within the exploding balls of light were 3 massive sea beasts, which had surrounded and were attacking a silver worm. The sea beasts were comprised of a giant seahorse, a massive green turtle, and a mountainous blue octopus. All of them were giving off violent auras and unleashing different types of ferocious attacks, all of which were directed toward the silver worm that they had surrounded. The 3 sea beasts were all close to the average Grand Ascension stage being in power, but they were riddled with wounds. Several parts of the green turtle's shell had been cracked, and green blood was flowing out of those cracks, while the giant octopus had large sections of its body charred black, and several of its tentacles had gone missing. In contrast, the seahorse appeared to be completely unscathed, but there was a shimmering golden ring locked around half of its body, making it noticeably slower than the other 2 sea beasts. The silver worm that was being attacked by the three beasts was in an even sorrier state. Not only had its tail and one of its front claws gone missing, most of its silver scales had been stripped away, and for some reason, it was bleeding profusely out of its eyes. Even so, it was still able to just barely keep the three sea beasts at bay, a silver lightning flashing incessantly around it. Han Li's gaze immediately fell upon the silver worm's stomach, where there was a small purple beast curled up into a ball. It was gripping tightly onto one of the silver worm's scales with its little claws, but it was completely motionless, and it was unclear whether it was dead or alive. Han Li's pupils immediately contracted slightly in the instant he caught sight of the small purple beast, which struck him with a sense of familiarity. The Ink Spirit Holy Ark was enormous, and Han Li was making no effort to conceal it, so it had naturally attracted the attention of the three sea beasts and the silver worm. However, the four of them were currently at a crucial juncture in their battle of life and death, so even though there was an outsider approaching, they simply couldn't stop. Instead, their battle suddenly became even more perilous and ferocious. In the face of its three opponents, the silver worm was well and truly on the back foot, and it was in extreme danger. Right as the giant ark was about to reach the four beasts, Han Li suddenly called out, "Stop!" His voice wasn't very loud, but it was like an explosive thunderclap in the ears of the four beasts, and they shuddered before involuntarily stumbling backward, thereby putting the battle on pause. The three sea beasts were naturally furious at Han Li's intervention, and they turned toward Han Li in unison with vicious expressions, then combined their three fearsome auras before sending it hurtling toward the giant ark like three immovable mountains. Han Li gave a cold harumph upon seeing this, and he made a hand seal, upon which the massive Provenance True Devil projection appeared behind him amid a flash of golden light. The projection opened its 6 eyes, and Han Li released an aura that was several times more formidable than the combined auras of the three sea beasts. The 4 auras clashed amid a rumbling boom, and the 3 sea beasts were immediately sent flying without being able to pose any resistance. Only after flying back for over 1,000 feet did they manage to steady themselves with alarmed expressions, and the giant seahorse asked, "Who are you, and why are you meddling in our business? We are all elders of the Sea Guardian Palace. Even with your powers, your time in the sea will be made extremely unpleasant if you make an enemy out of our palace." In response to this threat, Han Li remained expressionless and replied in a cold voice, "I've never heard of this Sea Guardian Palace. Piss off or I'll kill all 3 of you and refine your carcasses into tool refinement materials." The 3 sea beasts were even more enraged to hear this, but in the face of the overwhelming spiritual pressure being released by Han Li, they could only exchange a resigned glance before diving back into the depths of the sea. The silver worm transformed into a silver-robed man who was looking quite pale and had bloodstains all over his robes. He was holding the hand of a purple-robed little girl, and he extended a slight bow toward Han Li from afar. "Thank you for saving me, fellow Taoist." The silver worm was extremely proud, but after witnessing the power that Han Li had just displayed, he didn't dare to show any sign of disrespect. "If I'm not mistaken, your fellow Taoist Tu Yao, right?" "How did you know? Come to think of it, you seem rather familiar. Have we met before, fellow Taoist?" The silver-robed man was initially rather taken aback to hear this, but he then began to appraise Han Li with a hint of recognition in his eyes. There was no way that he would have forgotten someone as powerful as Han Li, so he was slightly perplexed by his own murky recollection. "Father, he's the man that we met during the auction when I was taken away by those bad people, the big brother with mother's aura," the little girl suddenly said as she began to tug on her father's sleeve in an urgent manner. 1. Indeed, this man was none other than the Grand Ascension stage human-faced worm who had barged into the Cloud City auction many years ago, and this little girl was his direct lineal descendant, who had been captured and was almost sold as an auction item. "What? It's you?" The silver-robed man was astonished to hear this, and he was struggling to equate this unfathomably powerful man with the spatial tempering cultivator that he had once encountered all those years ago. "I didn't expect to meet you here either, fellow Taoist too. We've only ever met once, but I think we qualify as acquaintances. How did you end up in such a sorry state? Those 3 sea beasts were quite powerful, but they haven't reached the Grand Ascension stage yet. Surely they shouldn't have been able to pose such a threat to you," Han Li asked. "If I had been in prime condition, those 3 elders of the Sea Guardian Palace naturally would have been no match for me. However, I fell into a trap laid by a powerful enemy of mine earlier, and as a result, My powers plummeted to below the Grand Ascension stage, and I could only use my physical body and bonded ability to fight those three elders. The silver-robed man sighed with a wry smile. I see. If you don't mind, would you be willing to let me examine your current condition? Han Li asked. The silver-robed man was rather hesitant upon hearing this. Perhaps I'm being too blunt here, but even if you have a way to slowly recover over time, I don't think your daughter will be able to hold on for much longer, Han Li said as he cast his gaze toward the purple-robed little girl. This auction took place when Han Li was in the 13 Heavenly Cloud races, right before he entered the Golden Devil mountain ranges and vast glacial realm. The silver worm appears in Chapter 1608. Chapter 2393, Sea Guardian Palace. You can identify the ailment that my daughter is suffering from. During my escape, I was struck by a secret technique unleashed by that enemy of mine, and even though I bore the brunt of the attack, a small portion of its power had fallen upon my daughter. Would you be able to cure her, fellow Taoist? The silver-robed man asked in an urgent manner. Have you not tried to cure her yourself? Han Li asked. That secret technique used by my enemy conflicts with my abilities, so if I were to attempt to cure her, her condition would only get worse. If you agree to help me, I'll be indebted to you for the rest of my life, Tu Yao replied with a wry smile. Your daughter's condition isn't too difficult for me to cure, and I can even allow you to recover your Grand Ascension stage powers. However, I have a condition, Han Li said in a calm voice. The silver-robed man's expression changed slightly upon hearing this, but he then immediately prompted, Go ahead and state your condition, Brother Han. As long as it's within my power, I'll be sure to satisfy you. There's no need to be so serious, Brother Tu. My condition is not very difficult to satisfy. All I want is for you to find a certain place on the nearby seabed for me, Han Li replied with a faint smile. That's it. Tu Yao's expression immediately eased slightly upon hearing this. What kind of condition did you think I was going to raise? Han Li chuckled. It looks like I was overthinking things. With the power you just displayed, I would be no match for you even at my peak, so there would be no need for you to try and deceive me. If that's the only condition, then I'd be more than happy to accept it, the silver-robed man said. In that case, please come onto my ark, and I'll administer treatment to you and your daughter, Han Li replied with a nod. The silver-robed man took a glance at the massive black ark and didn't hesitate as he drifted onto it with her daughter. Thus, the Ing-Spirit Holy Ark returned to its original trajectory at Han Li's behest and continued to fly through the air. The next day, the silver-robed man was conversing with Han Li in the cabin of the ark with a grateful expression, while his daughter was standing behind him, looking much better than she had the previous day. Patriarch Huashi and Zhu Gyur were also standing off to the side in a respectful manner. Your powers are truly unfathomable, fellow Taoist. I had thought that it would take at least several months to cure me and my daughter. I never imagined that it would only take a single night for you. If the Sea Guardian place dares to send anyone else after me, I'll be able to make sure they never return, the silver-robed man said in an elated manner. Don't mention it, fellow Taoist. By the way, what is this Sea Guardian Palace? Those three elders of the palace aren't anything special in our eyes, but they're definitely more powerful than most body integration stage beings, Han Li said as he stroked his own chin. The silver-robed man's expression changed slightly upon hearing this, but he still replied truthfully, The Sea Guardian Palace is a power founded by that enemy of mine. He is the main palace master, and aside from him, there are also 2 other Grand Ascension stage palace masters, as well as over 100 elders comparable in power to the 3 you encountered the day before. As for other sea beasts under the palace's command, there's simply too many to count. Oh, this Sea Guardian Palace sounds like quite a formidable power. Why weren't any of its Grand Ascension stage beings sent to hunt you down in your weakened state? Han Li asked. The Sea Guardian place is an enemy of mine, but I'm on good terms with another major power in this region of the sea, the Azure Worm Hall. After unleashing a secret technique to escape from my enemy, I sent out an SOS message, and my good friends at the Azure Worm Hall organized a large-scale attack on the Sea Guardian Palace, thereby preventing the other 2 Grand Ascension stage palace masters from being able to come after me. However, the route to the Azure Worm Hall has been completely sealed off by the sea beasts of the Sea Guardian Palace, which is why I had to flee all the way here, the silver-robed man replied. I see. Judging by the Azure Worm Hall's name, I'm assuming its leaders are powerful beings of the Azure Worm race, Han Li said. That's right. The two Hall Masters of the Azure Worm Hall are both Grand Ascension stage beings of the Azure Worm race, and they're close friends whom I'm willing to entrust my life to. Even though the Azure Worm Hall only has two Grand Ascension stage beings, they're far more powerful than the three Palace Masters of the Sea Guardian Palace, so the two powers are evenly matched in terms of overall power. By the way, I recall you were only at the spatial tempering stage when I last met you in Cloud City. How have you progressed to the Grand Ascension stage in such a short time? Even throughout all of history, I'm not sure if there's anyone who can match your astonishing aptitude, Tu Yao said, clearly still stunned by Han Li's drastic transformation. It was all thanks to several miraculous opportunities that I encountered that I was able to reach my current cultivation base. But in terms of the stability of my foundation, there's no way I can compare with a veteran Grand Ascension stage being like yourself, Han Li replied in a humble manner. You're far too modest, fellow Taoist. Also, what is this place that you want me to help you look for? I can't say that I know every inch of this region like the back of my hand, but I've visited all of the special areas in this region, Tu Yao said. I'm searching for a set of underwater coordinates. As for the exact location, Huashi, come over here and tell fellow Taoist Tu what we're looking for. Huashi is a sea beast himself, so I'm sure he'll be able to deliver a better report than me, Han Li said. Huashi immediately did as he was told, making his way over to Tu Yao before providing a detailed explanation. Senior Tu, the coordinates we're searching for were provided to us by an ancient altar, and the location's characteristics are. Even though they had learned the approximate coordinates of the small spirit sky's entrance through the ancient altar, the sea was unfathomably massive, so even a slight margin of error could equate to countless kilometers. Patriarch Huashi was adept in water attribute abilities, but even with his help, it wouldn't be a simple task to find the entrance. As such, Han Li was requesting the help of Tu Yao, who was both a Grand Ascension stage being and very familiar with this region. With his assistance, tracking down the correct location shouldn't be too difficult. As for three Grand Ascension stage beings of the Sea Guardian Palace, even if they were slightly more powerful than the average Grand Ascension stage being, they would still pose no match to the current Han Li, so he wasn't concerned about them at all. After some discussion, Tu Yao and Patriarch Huashi quickly ascertained an area of the seabed that fit the description of the small spirit sky's entrance, and the Ink-Spirit Holy Ark immediately flew toward that direction at several times its original speed. 2 months later, the giant black ark was situated in the air above an area of the sea that was filled with rocks and coral. Thousands of high-grade puppets were patrolling this area of the sea, while even more devil crystal puppets were scouring the seabed in search for something. Patriarch Huashi and Tu Yao had also joined the puppets, searching the seabed with their spiritual sense. Meanwhile, Han Li sat on the deck of the ark, meditating with his eyes closed. Zhu Guor seemed to be standing patiently by his side, but the occasional glances she was aiming at the sea outside the ark naturally hadn't escaped Han Li's notice. Why are you so agitated? This is the place that the two of them have determined to be the likeliest location of the entrance, so a verdict will definitely be delivered to us soon, Han Li said while his eyes remained closed. I'm just worried that this would be another fruitless trip. The two seniors said the same thing about the previous two locations we visited, but neither of them turned out to be the place we're looking for, Zhu Guor said. The sea is enormous, and the underwater world is extremely complex, so it's no surprise that mistakes will be made. However, I have a premonition that this is the place we're searching for, Han Li replied with a smile. Zhu Guor was very elated to hear this. With your powers, I'm sure your premonition is correct. All of a sudden, Han Li's eyes narrowed slightly as he cast his gaze toward a certain direction. It looks like I have to take care of some unwelcome guests. Meanwhile, a group of sea beasts had appeared on the surface of the ocean hundreds of thousands of kilometers away. These sea beasts varied drastically in size and appearance, and there were so many of them that they covered virtually every single inch of area within a radius of 100 kilometers. At the very front of the group was a long-haired man wearing a jade crown, seated atop a giant green turtle, and he was leading the army of sea beasts toward the direction where the Ink-Spirit Holy Ark was situated. Directly behind the giant green turtle was a massive seahorse and a mountainous blue octopus. I can sense that that man is just up ahead. HMPH, how dare he foil our palace's plans? He must have a death wish. Prepare the myriad beast formation. I'm going to trap him here and wear him down until he's dead. the long-haired man suddenly commanded in a cold voice. A horn was immediately blown within the army of sea beasts, and all of the beasts sprang into action, quickly arranging themselves into a profound formation even as they continued to march onward. Such a massive army of sea beasts naturally quickly attracted the attention of a group of armored puppets patrolling the nearby area, and they immediately flew over to the sea beast army. This was a group of around a dozen puppets, and they were led by a silver puppet which declared in a cold voice, "Stop! Our master is doing something up ahead. All outsiders must stop here or face death." The long-haired man's expression immediately darkened upon seeing this. What insolence! As soon as his voice trailed off, around a dozen powerful sea beasts behind him opened their mouths in unison, releasing a string of powerful attacks that almost instantly blew the puppets into countless pieces. Chapter 2394, Small Spirit Sky. The long-haired man then waved a hand, and the sea beast army immediately continued onward. Right at this moment, spatial fluctuations erupted nearby, and a translucent thread shot out of thin air without any warning, then instantly reached the long-haired man as if through teleportation before transforming into a streak of translucent sword chi. The long-haired man was rather surprised by this attack, but remained calm and opened his mouth to release a ball of purple light, which instantly transformed into a giant shield that was riddled with purple patterns. At the same time, he made a hand seal, conjuring up a blue water barrier that instantly inundated his entire body. In the next instant, the translucent sword chi tore through the giant shield and water barrier like a hot knife through butter, then revolved around the long-haired man's body like lightning, slicing him in half right before his astonished gaze. The two halves of the long-haired man's body instantly exploded into countless bubbles, and these semi-transparent bubbles shot forth in all directions. Right at this moment, the translucent sword chi faded, and a miniature purplish-golden figure appeared before sweeping a finger toward a certain direction, releasing a streak of invisible sword chi that instantly swept up one of the fleeing bubbles. The bubble immediately transformed into a miniature humanoid figure that was identical to the long-haired man in appearance. Even though it had several powerful protective treasures to defend itself with, all of them were quickly destroyed by the streak of sword chi, and the miniature figure was also destroyed amid an anguished howl. From the instant that the translucent thread appeared to the moment the long-haired man was slain, everything had taken place in the blink of an eye. The army of sea beasts didn't even get a chance to react, and once they realized what had happened, all of them were naturally extremely enraged. The dozen or so most powerful sea beasts among them let loose thunderous roars, unleashing all types of attacks that shot forth directly toward Jin Tong in a frenzy. A cold light flashed through Jin Tong's eyes upon seeing this, and it released countless streaks of invisible sword chi that rained down from the heavens, destroying all of the oncoming attacks with ease before plunging into the army of sea beasts down below. Even the average Grand Ascension stage being wouldn't dare to oppose this sword chi head-on, so these sea beasts were naturally completely powerless. Hordes of sea beasts were instantly torn apart by the streaks of sword chi, and countless severed limbs floated onto the surface of the ocean, which had been stained red by blood. The sea beasts were finally becoming horrified upon seeing this, and one of them let loose a shrill cry, upon which all of the remaining sea beasts scattered and fled for their lives in all directions. Meanwhile, Jin Tong looked on from above with a cold expression, then made a grabbing motion toward the ocean down below. The long-haired man's storage bracelet immediately flew out before landing in Jin Tong's grasp, and it took a brief glance at the storage bracelet before vanishing on the spot. At the same time, blue light within Han Li's eyes faded as he stood at the front of the Ing Spirit Holy Ark, and he murmured to himself, "All right, now that those unwelcome guests have been taken care of, we can wait in peace." Zhu Guor was standing behind Han Li, and judging from her expression, it was clear that she had no idea what had happened. After that, Han Li closed his eyes to meditate again. Half a day later, just as the sky was beginning to dim, a talisman suddenly flew out of the sea. Han Li immediately opened his eyes and made a grabbing motion to draw the talisman into his own grasp. The talisman then immediately exploded into a crimson fireball, and a stream of information was transmitted into Han Li's spiritual sense, upon which an elated look appeared on his face. "What is it, Senior Han?" Zhu Guor asked in an eager manner. "They've finally found a place that they suspect to be the entrance. Let's go there right now," Han Li said as he rose to his feet. Zhu Guor was naturally also ecstatic to hear this. Thus, a black light barrier emerged around the ark at Han Li's behest, and the giant ark slowly descended into the sea. In a secluded area of the seabed, where countless colorful marine plants were growing, there were hundreds of puppets gathered in front of a giant crimson rock. Patriarch Huashi and Tu Yao were standing in front of the puppets, and they were in the process of appraising the crimson rock when the ink spirit holy ark rumbled toward them from the distance like a fiend celestial. The ark quickly arrived above the crimson rock, following which Han Li made a hand seal, and the black light barrier around the ark swelled drastically to encompass an area with a radius of several kilometers, forcing back all of the nearby seawater. Master Han, fellow Taoist Han, Patriarch Huashi and Tu Yao immediately approached Han Li following his arrival. Han Li abruptly vanished from the giant ark before appearing right in front of the giant crimson rock. This is the place you were referring to in the talisman. That's right. Senior Tu and I have verified our verdict repeatedly, so there should be no mistake. On top of that, we can sense some spatial fluctuations seeping out of this area, Patriarch Huashi replied in a respectful manner. Fellow Taoist Huashi is correct. I'm 80% sure that this is the entrance you're searching for, Brother Han, Tu Yao chimed in a confident manner. Thank you for your hard work, Brother Tu. Gyur, come over here, Han Li said as he waved a hand toward Zhu Gyur, who was still on the ark. Zhu Gyur hurriedly flew over to Han Li, who instructed, "Come with me and we'll examine to see if this is indeed the entrance to the small spirit sky. If it is, then Huashi will also enter with the ark and the puppets." "Yes, Senior Han." "As you wish, Master Han." Zhu Gyur and Patriarch Huashi both gave affirmative responses. Tu Yao was of the opinion that what Han Li was doing was rather risky, but he then thought back to the astonishing power that Han Li had displayed and decided against trying to dissuade him. Immediately thereafter, Han Li released a burst of spiritual light that swept up Zhu Gyur before flying toward the giant rock. The seemingly ordinary surface of the massive rock warped slightly, and Han Li's duo flew directly into it, leaving Patriarch Huashi, Tu Yao, and the puppets waiting for them on the outside. As soon as Han Li flew into the giant rock with Zhu Gyur, he immediately decelerated, and his body became very sluggish, as if he had flown into some type of restriction. At the same time, the spatial fluctuations that had been very faint outside became extremely pronounced here, and there was a ball of rainbow light up ahead that was slowly revolving on the spot. Han Li directed his spiritual sense into the ball of rainbow light, and his eyes immediately lit up as he transformed into a golden ape that was over 100 feet tall. Following his transformation, his sluggishness was immediately alleviated, and he grabbed onto Zhu Gyur before striding toward the ball of rainbow light. Han Li then plunged headfirst into the ball of rainbow light and vanished on the spot. In another realm, an earth-shattering boom rang out within a certain forest, and countless beams of golden light suddenly erupted out of a giant lush pine tree. The tree then shuddered before exploding into countless scraps of wood, leaving a giant crater that was several tens of feet deep on the ground. Over 100 feet above the crater was a ball of rainbow light that was revolving incessantly, and two people flew out of it amid a burst of spatial fluctuations. They were none other than Han Li and Zhu Gyur. Han Li quickly inspected his surroundings, and his brows furrowed slightly as he said, "The spiritual chi here really is less abundant than that of the spirit realm. Gyur, is this the small spirit sky?" "Please give me a moment, Senior Han. The density of the spiritual chi here is very much like that of the small spirit sky, but let me check just to make sure," Zhu Gyur replied in an excited manner as she also inspected her surroundings. Immediately thereafter, she flipped a hand over to summon a handkerchief, which she tossed forward before quickly casting several incantation seals into. A burst of white light flashed over the handkerchief, and an extremely clear map immediately appeared. Zhu Gyur was ecstatic to see this, and she said, "My secret technique worked, so this is definitely the small spirit sky. Let me check our current location. We're in the green sea of the small spirit sky. It doesn't matter where we are right now as long as this is indeed the small spirit sky. You stay here for now. I'll bring Huashi and the others here." The passageway was more difficult than expected to pass through, so Huashi won't be able to go through it alone, Han Li instructed. Zhu Gyur naturally gave an affirmative response to this. Thus, Han Li flew back into the ball of rainbow light again, and around 15 minutes later, another burst of spatial fluctuations erupted as the ink spirit holy ark, now shrunk down significantly, flew out of the ball of light. As soon as the ark emerged, it immediately returned to its original mountainous size, and Han Li and Patriarch Hua Shi were revealed at the front of the ark. As for Tu Yao and his daughter, they had already departed on the other side of the passageway after extending their gratitude toward Han Li once again. Zhu Guor immediately flew onto the ark with an excited smile, upon which Han Li turned to her and said, "All right, tell me about this green sea as well as where you were living in the small spirit sky in the past. I want to have a good chat with your mother." The Green Sea is the territory of the Green Spirit race, which is the most powerful race in the small spirit sky, and also the sworn enemy of our human race. As for the place where I lived in the small spirit sky, that would be the human territory, which is on the other side of the small spirit sky, so it's extremely far away, Zhu Guo replied in a slightly dejected manner. Chapter 2395, Green Spirit Race. The Green Spirit Race. Are these green-skinned beings with semi-transparent wings? Han Li asked as his eyes narrowed slightly. Zhu Guor's expression changed slightly upon hearing this. How did you know, Senior Han? It seems that the entrance of our Ink Spirit Holy Ark into this realm has caused too much of a disturbance, and there are many green spirit beings converging toward us as we speak, Han Li replied. I see. Be careful, Senior Han. No Grand Ascension stage beings exist in the small spirit sky due to insufficient spiritual qi, but the green spirit race is still the most powerful race in this entire realm. They can communicate with true spirit-like beings known as ancient ancestral tree spirits through possession, and their power is not inferior to that of the average Grand Ascension stage being, Zhu Guo hurriedly cautioned. Ancient ancestral tree spirits. That sounds interesting. However, this isn't the time to be getting involved in pointless conflicts. If those green spirit beings know what's good for them, then they'll stay out of my way, then I'll leave them be. However, if they dare to try and get in my way, then I wouldn't mind teaching them a lesson. No one can know about the entrance to this passageway, so I'll set up a restriction to conceal it, Han Li said as a cold light flashed through his eyes. Immediately thereafter, he raised a sleeve to release a series of formation flags, which transformed into balls of light of different colors before vanishing into the surrounding space in a flash. Han Li then made a hand seal before pointing a finger at the ball of rainbow light, releasing a burst of 5 colored runes that transformed into a light barrier to conceal the entire ball of light. In the blink of an eye, the ball of rainbow light and the light barrier had both disappeared, and the faint spatial fluctuations emanating from the ball of light were also cut off. After that, Han Li chanted an incantation before switching to a different hand seal, then swept his sleeve through the air again, releasing a burst of green light that transformed into a huge rune before exploding amid a dull thump. Countless green threads dispersed through the surrounding area, and the giant pine tree, which had already been reduced to scraps of wood, began to rapidly reform itself at a rate discernible to the naked eye, as if by some kind of miracle. Even the crater on the ground was beginning to become filled again, and within the span of just a few breaths, both the tree and the ground had returned to normal. After sweeping his spiritual sense through the area to ensure that he hadn't missed anything, a pleased look appeared on Han Li's face. He then thrust a palm toward the distance, and a small mountain close to 10 kilometers away was instantly razed to the ground amid an earth-shattering boom. A giant handprint had appeared on the ground within a radius of half a kilometer around the spot where the mountain had once stood, and the handprint was over 100 feet deep. Even all of the fingerprints on the hand were clearly visible. "Let's go," Han Li instructed with a faint smile, following which the giant ark quickly flew away into the distance. A short while later, several streaks of light arrived on the scene from another direction, then stopped above the giant handprint that had been left behind by Han Li, revealing 3 humanoid figures with semi-transparent cicada-like wings on their backs. The 3 of them were comprised of a woman and 2 men, all of whom had green skin and were tall and gangly. The 3 of them looked down at the giant handprint with grim expressions, and the slightly more well-built man asked, "What do you think of this, Ku Ying?" The woman's brows were tightly furrowed as she replied, "Whoever did this must be extremely powerful. At the very least, the 3 of us wouldn't be able to do this." HMPH, that's a massive understatement. Whoever did this is most definitely far more powerful than the 3 of us, the other man harumphed coldly. Judging from the shape of this handprint, it was clearly left behind by a human. Is there someone this powerful among the human race? Ku Ying asked with a hint of befuddlement in her eyes. In the past, the most powerful being in the human race was Layman Tai Jun of the Heavenly Gate Mountain, and he's only slightly more powerful than us. Could this have been left behind by a new powerful being of the human race? The first man speculated. The small spirit sky isn't exactly a massive place. How could we not have heard anything if such a powerful being had appeared in the human race? Also, why did this person appear right at the center of our green sea? The second man mused. That is indeed rather strange. It looks like we'll have to ask the culprit for an answer, the woman said as a cold look flashed through her eyes. What do you two think could be the meaning of this? The first man asked as he stroked his own chin in a contemplative manner. What else could it mean? This handprint was obviously left here to intimidate us, but whoever did this is sorely mistaken if they think they can just get away with this. Even if they're a grand ascension stage being of the human race, they have to provide an explanation for this, the second man said with a cold smile. Of course. Otherwise, if word of this were to spread, the other races would all think that they could enter and exit our green sea as they pleased. By the way, what were those spatial fluctuations that appeared at the beginning? Could it be that human unleashed some type of spatial secret technique that allowed them to ignore the restrictions we set up and teleport into the green sea? The woman speculated. I also sensed those spatial fluctuations, but I couldn't find anything nearby giving off residual spatial fluctuations, so it looks like that human must have erased it, the second man replied. Regardless of what their objective is, we'll just have to catch them and interrogate them. This might be a good thing for our green spirit race. After all, we might not be able to successfully summon the ancient ancestral tree spirits outside of the green sea, the first man said with a smile. Indeed, what are we waiting for then? Let's give chase right away. With that human-s powers, our brethren won't be able to stall him for long even with the power of the green sea to aid them, the woman said. The two men naturally had no objections to this, and thus, they set off once again as streaks of light, flying toward the same direction as the giant ark. Meanwhile, the Ink Spirit Holy Ark was still flying through the air, but thousands of green spirit beings had appeared nearby, and they were wielding different types of treasures to attack the ark from afar. Countless devil crystal puppets had also emerged on the ark, releasing pillars of light and bolts of lightning to oppose the green spirit beings in a fierce battle. However, even the most powerful of these green spirit beings were only at the spatial tempering stage, so their attacks were kept at bay with ease by the black light barrier around the giant ark. As for the attacks being unleashed by the puppets, they were all being kept at bay by a series of leaf projections being summoned by the green spirit beings. The battles seemed to be extremely fierce, but there weren't actually many casualties, and the giant ark wasn't slowed down in the slightest either. All of a sudden, close to half of the green spirit beings arranged themselves into a strange formation before making hand seals and chanting incantations. Green light flashed within the countless giant trees down below, and each of them released a leaf projection, which quickly converged to form a giant leaf projection that was several acres in size. The projection then instantly appeared above the black ark before descending from the heavens, as if it were attempting to sweep up the entire ark. Right at this moment, spatial fluctuations erupted above the giant ark, and a huge azure hand appeared before swooping upward like lightning. The azure hand immediately grabbed onto the giant leaf projection, which began a struggle with all its might as if it were a living creature, but the massive hand's grip was far too firm for the leaf projection to escape. The green spirit beings in the formation were stunned to see this, and they hurriedly poured their magic power into the projection above the ark in a frenzy. The giant leaf projection was originally slightly blurry and indistinct, but with that influx of energy, it became a lot clearer and more substantial, and it also began to release a powerful aura as its struggle intensified. A cold harumph suddenly rang out from the giant ark, following which the massive azure hand tightened its grip, and exerted a burst of tremendous force upon the leaf projection that instantly tore the projection apart. As a result, all of the green spirit beings in the formation were struck by backlash, and their faces paled significantly as they began to throw up mouthfuls of blood. Some of the weaker individuals even plummeted straight out of the sky. Right at this moment, Han Li emerged at the front of the ark, then cast a cold gaze toward the surrounding green spirit beings. I had intended to spare all of you, but seeing as you insist on irking me, I'll send you all on your way. As soon as his voice trailed off, Han Li rubbed his hands together, conjuring up a ball of golden lightning that swelled drastically in size while rising up higher into the air. Scintillating golden light radiated in all directions, while rumbling thunderclaps shook the entire heavens. In the blink of an eye, the ball of lightning had swelled to the size of a pavilion, with countless arcs of golden lightning flashing over its surface, releasing a devastatingly destructive aura. The nearby green spirit beings were all extremely alarmed to see this, and one of their leaders immediately issued an order to retreat, upon which all of them fled into the distance. However, Han Li wasn't going to let them get away so easily. A cold look flashed through his eyes as he flicked an incantation seal into the giant ball of lightning, and it instantly exploded, sending countless arcs of golden lightning shooting in all directions. Chapter 2396, Ancient Ancestral Tree Spirit. Countless green spirit beings were quickly reduced to ashes by the eruption of lightning, and in the blink of an eye, only several tens of green spirit beings remained. All of them were naturally horrified to see this, and only then did they realize that the enemy on the giant ark was far beyond what they could deal with. Thus, they immediately fled for their lives, and Han Li displayed no intention of continuing to pursue them. Right as he was about to return to the ark's cabin, 3 streaks of light suddenly shot forth from the distance. Han Li's eyes narrowed slightly as he stopped in his tracks, and moments later, the 3 streaks of light faded to reveal the trio of green spirit beings from earlier, who were extremely enraged to see so many of their elite brethren lying dead around them. They had predicted that their brethren wouldn't have been able to prevent the enemy from advancing, but such a high number of casualties was beyond their expectations. After all, it had only taken them around 15 minutes to catch up to the giant ark. The 3 green spirit beings immediately cast their eyes toward Han Li, upon which astonishment appeared on all of their faces. That really is a grand ascension stage human being. Han Li was also looking back at the trio, and he had identified them to be mere mid-body integration and late-body integration stage beings, so he wasn't concerned in the slightest. So a grand ascension cultivator really has arisen among the human race. May I ask your name? Also, don't you think it's unbecoming of someone like you to kill so many juniors of our green spirit race? One of the 3 green spirit beings asked in a furious voice. They dared to get in my way. If I didn't teach them a lesson, I would become the laughing stock of my fellow Taoists. As for my name, that's not something that you need to know, Han Li replied in a cold voice. A thought suddenly occurred to the burly man, and his expression changed slightly as he asked, "Did you come from another realm?" "So what if I did?" Han Li asked. "If you really are from another realm, then for the sake of all of the races in the small spirit sky, we're going to have to make sure that you never leave this green sea," the thinner of the 2 men said with a cold light in his eyes. "What gives 3 body integration stage beings like you the confidence to say this? Are you pinning your hopes on those ancient ancestral tree spirits?" Han Li asked with a hint of a smile on his face. The burly man's pupils contracted slightly upon hearing this. "You know about the ancient ancestral tree spirits. Looks like you didn't enter this realm by accident." Han Li merely smiled and offered no response. "It looks like we'll have to summon the ancient ancestral tree spirits, fellow Taoists. For the sake of the small spirit sky, we have to capture this man no matter what. There are 3 of us and only one of him, so we definitely have an advantage," the woman in the trio said as a fierce light flashed through her eyes. The 2 men immediately nodded in agreement. Over the years, they had developed a near-blind sense of worship toward the ancient ancestral tree spirits, and even in the face of a grand ascension stage being who had never appeared in the small spirit sky before, they were very confident. Thus, the 3 of them raised their left arms in unison, and their sleeves were immediately torn apart, revealing an extremely vivid ancient tree image on each of their arms. The 3 ancient tree images were different from one another. One of them was extremely lush with countless leaves and branches. Another one was tall and ramrod straight with a shimmering silver hue, and leaves and branches that resembled swords, and the final one was extremely colorful with flowers of different sizes covering all of its branches. "Reveal yourselves, ancestral spirits," the 3 green spirit beings yelled in unison as they each made a hand seal. Azure light immediately swept over their left arms, and 3 small tree projections emerged. The world's origin chi within the forest down below abruptly stirred, and countless green threads surged out of all of the trees before flooding into the 3 tree projections in a frenzy. In the blink of an eye, the projections had swelled drastically in size, transforming into massive trees that were over 1,000 feet tall and flashing with green light. As for the 3 green spirit beings, they had all vanished on the spot. The trunks of the 3 giant trees blurred slightly, and a face appeared on each of them. Those faces were identical to those of the trio of green spirit beings who had just disappeared. So these are ancient ancestral tree spirits. The purity of the wood attribute spiritual chi they contain is truly remarkable. A hint of surprise flashed through Han Li's eyes as he sensed the powerful auras being released by the three massive trees. At this moment, the three giant trees warped and blurred before transforming into a trio of giants. One of the giants had long green hair and was wearing a suit of azure wooden armor. Another giant was more slender with a pair of resplendent wings on its back and a giant green sword in its hand. And the final giant was the most imposing of the three, wearing a suit of silver armor that was riddled with hooked spikes, and it was wielding a huge silver hammer in each hand. As soon as the three giants appeared, the one with long green hair immediately declared, "It's still not too late to surrender. All you have to do is tell us the location of the entrance into this realm, then return to your own realm. Otherwise, once the ancestral spirits spring into action, even we won't be able to control their actions, and it would be too late to regret your decision once you perish by their hands." What insolence! Even if you were true Grand Ascension stage beings, you would still be nothing in my eyes. However, this possession secret technique that you're using is quite interesting. It would be worth studying this secret technique once I capture you. Let's not waste any more time with useless chatter. The human race has always been our sworn enemy. He's looking down on us just because he's a Grand Ascension stage being, so let's show him the power of the ancient ancestral tree spirits, the slender giant said in a furious voice. As soon as its voice trailed off, the three giants immediately began a charge toward the Ink Spirit Holy Ark. Han Li stood at the front of the ark, and a faint smile appeared on his face at the sight of the approaching giants. All of a sudden, he swept a sleeve through the air, releasing a bolt of silver lightning that transformed into the expressionless Taoist Zai. Brother Zai, your cultivation arts are perfect to counter these ancient ancestral tree spirits, so I'll leave them to you. If possible, please capture one of them alive, Han Li instructed. Leave them to me, Taoist Zai replied as he cast his gaze toward the three giants in the distance. He then stomped a foot onto the ark and shot forth toward the trio of giants amid countless arcs of silver lightning, transforming into a giant golden crab that was several acres in size mid-flight. After that, the gigantic crab extended its pair of pincers forward, then opened its mouth to release a pillar of silver lightning, which reached the slender giant in a flash. At the same time, spatial fluctuations erupted above the other two giants, and a pair of massive pincer projections came crashing down toward them alongside a vast expanse of silver lightning. The three giants were naturally very alarmed to see this. Never did they think that their opponent would be able to summon such a fearsome being who just so happened to possess lightning attribute abilities, which directly countered their own wood attribute powers. The burly giant raised its hammers and unleashed countless hammer projection toward the descending pincer projection, while the long-haired giant made a hand seal, and countless massive vines emerged from its suit of azure wooden armor amid a flash of spiritual light. The vines intertwined with one another as they rose up into the air, forming a giant net to oppose the other pincer projection. As for the slender giant, it wore a grim expression and was preparing to oppose the oncoming bolt of silver lightning with its green sword. The surface of the giant's sword warped slightly, and it suddenly transformed into a huge green shield with countless spirit patterns etched on its surface. Immediately thereafter, a string of earth-shattering booms rang out as a series of devastating clashes took place, and a vast expanse of silver lightning erupted forth in all directions. Right at this moment, the giant golden crab let loose a low roar, and countless silver lightning runes suddenly appeared on its back, then converged to form a massive lightning formation. The lightning formation quickly vanished into thin air amid a rumbling boom, and in the next instant, it appeared above the three giants amid a burst of violent spatial fluctuations. The giant golden crab also appeared above the trio of giants before fusing as one with the lightning formation, which began to slowly descend from above. The three giants immediately let loose enraged roars, and they released bursts of violent auras, only for them to be torn apart by the massive lightning formation on contact. In the next instant, the lightning formation transformed into a lightning cloud that completely inundated the three giants. Rumbling thunderclaps rang out incessantly alongside cries of pain from the three giants, and balls of lightning were exploding violently within the cloud. A faint smile appeared on Han Li's face upon seeing this, and he strode back into the Ark's cabin without any hesitation. Even the three patriarchs of the Elder Devil realm had been quite wary of Taoist Zai's powers. There was no way that these three counterfeit Grand Ascension stage beings would be able to last very long against him. Furthermore, Taoist Zai even had an advantage in terms of the attribute of his cultivation arts, so the outcome of this battle was already a foregone conclusion. Around 15 minutes later, the sound of footsteps rang out outside the cabin, and Taoist Zai strode in with a calm expression. Han Li was seated on a chair, studying a cultivation art, and he immediately raised his head before asking with a smile, "Did you kill them all?" "Of course not. You asked me to capture one alive, didn't you?" Taoist Zai replied as he swept a sleeve through the air to release a small silver vial. Han Li drew the small vial into his own grasp, then injected his spiritual sense into it to discover a nascent soul that was several inches tall and identical in appearance to the thin man among the trio of green spirit beings. Han Li nodded with a pleased expression and didn't ask about what had become of the other two green spirit beings. Spiritual light flashed from his hand as he stowed the small vial away into his storage bracelet, following which the giant arc set off again, and on this occasion, no more green spirit beings dared to get in its way. Chapter 2397, Shocking the Human Race. Not long after this, news of the three most powerful beings of the green spirit race being killed by a grand ascension stage human being began to spread. The foreign races neighboring the green spirit race were extremely alarmed to hear this, and they immediately sent out scouts to verify the authenticity of this news. Soon, the entire small spirit sky was completely stirred up into a frenzy. At this point, the Ink Spirit Holy Ark had already left the territory of the green spirit race and was heading toward human territory on the other side of the small spirit sky. Several days later, a group of powerful human beings were seated around a stone table in an antiquated stone hall situated on a tall mountain, discussing something with one another with grim looks on their faces. These humans were comprised of 3 men and 1 woman, all of whom were at the body integration stage. Can we confirm the news to be accurate? Was it really a grand ascension stage human being who killed those 3 green spirit beings and ancient ancestral tree spirits? A middle-aged man with a dark complexion asked. Our scouts were unable to enter the Green Sea, but judging from the reactions of all of the races, the information is most likely accurate. Otherwise, the Green Spirit race wouldn't have withdrawn all of its members into the Green Sea in an emergency retreat during the past few days. A white-haired elderly man replied as he stroked his own beard. But we all know that no grand ascension stage being has ever arisen from our human race in the small spirit sky, and it'll most likely never happen in the future either, a green-robed woman said with furrowed brows. Perhaps I would agree with you in the past, but have you forgotten about Fairy Moon? In such a short time, she was able to progress from the spatial tempering stage to the pinnacle of the body integration stage. Perhaps she can become the first grand ascension stage human being of our small spirit sky, a white-robed man said. The blue-robed woman's expression changed slightly upon hearing this, but she still shook her head as she said, "Fellow Taoist Moon's aptitude doesn't require further elaboration. In just 2,000 years, she's become the most powerful being of our human race and can even match an ancient ancestral tree spirit in battle. However, I don't think it's plausible to expect fellow Taoist Moon to reach the grand ascension stage with the lack of spiritual chi in our small spirit sky." "It's indeed implausible, but with Fairy Moon's aptitude, there's still a chance," the white-robed man countered. "If Fairy Moon really can progress to the grand ascension stage, that would be extremely fortunate for our human race. However, in her current state, it would require at least several more centuries of cultivation before she can begin attempting a breakthrough. By the way, Fairy Moon is currently cultivating an extremely important secret technique, so I'm not sure if she can attend this meeting," the white-haired elderly man said in a calm manner. "Rest assured, fellow Taoist Tai, Fairy Moon is currently unable to come out of seclusion, but I've already sent her a report of the situation, and I'm sure she'll give us a response soon," the white-robed man replied. "That's good to hear. I feel rather uneasy not having Fairy Moon present to discuss such an important matter with us. Now then, let's think about where this grand ascension stage human being could have come from," the white-haired elderly man said. "It's most likely a grand ascension cultivator from another realm," the blue-robed woman speculated. "That is indeed the likeliest scenario. However, seeing as this grand ascension stage being is human, he must have come from the spirit realm. Also, he was able to enter our small spirit sky, so he must have a way of returning to the spirit realm. This is an unmissable opportunity for us to go to the spirit realm," the man with the dark complexion said. "Only in the spirit realm will we have a chance at reaching the grand ascension stage. Even though beings from other races have discovered exits that can allow them to leave this realm, none of them have been able to withstand the fearsome spatial power within the passageways, so they could only give up. If that grand ascension stage human being really did force his way into the small spirit sky from another realm, then this would be a massive opportunity for our entire human race, the white-robed man said as a fervent look appeared in his eyes. Unfortunately, we don't know much about the spirit realm, and we still don't know whether this grand ascension stage being came from the spirit realm. We can't even be sure if he's a human cultivator. However, one thing is for sure. That man will most likely visit our human territory, so we have to prepare some precautionary measures. We have to be prepared just in case this man develops some sinister intentions toward our human race, the white-haired elderly man said in a cautious manner. You're right, but considering that man was able to kill the 3 ancient ancestral tree spirits, his powers are clearly far beyond ours. Only Fairy Moon will stand a chance against him. After all, fellow Taoist Moon is the only one among us with powers close to the Grand Ascension stage, the white-robed man said. It most likely won't be possible for Fairy Moon to come out of seclusion anytime soon. After all, she's currently... The white-haired elderly man's voice was suddenly cut off here when a streak of silver light approached the hall before flying into it in a flash. It then transformed into a small silver sword that descended toward the stone table that everyone was gathered around. Attached to the small sword was a white jade slip, and the white-haired elderly man immediately detached the jade slip from the sword. Immediately thereafter, the silver sword shuddered slightly before flying out of the hall as a streak of silver light. Thus, everyone turned their attention toward the jade slip that the elderly man was holding. The elderly man pressed the jade slip against his own forehead, then closed his eyes and injected his spiritual sense into it. Moments later, he reopened his eyes with an elated expression and said, "It's a message from Fairy Moon. She's agreed to go and meet that grand ascension stage being with us when he arrives in our human territory." That's great news. Having fellow Taoist Moon accompany us would be greatly reassuring, the white-robed man said with an elated expression, and everyone else's expressions also eased slightly. After that, a short discussion ensued before everyone departed from the stone hall to make the required preparations. Elsewhere within a secluded valley, there was a secret chamber, the entrance to which was sealed by a layer of glacial ice. There was a white-robed woman seated on a pristine silver disc in silent meditation. The woman was as still as a statue, and even though her facial features were concealed by a faint silver light barrier, it was apparent that she was an exceptional beauty. Close to a month later, a mountainous black arc suddenly appeared above a mountain range out the outskirts of human territory. After just a few flashes, the arc flew over the mountain range and traveled deeper into human territory, leaving behind countless stunned onlookers in the mountain range. The humans of the small spirit sky had never seen such a massive flying treasure before, and some of them had the presence of mind to send out messages announcing the Ark's arrival into human territory using some special treasures. Even though the in-spirit Holy Ark was extremely eye-catching, no one tried to stop it as it continued deeper into human territory. 2 days later, the Ark passed over a large lake before stopping above a set of small mountains. "That's where my mother's cave abode is, Senior Han. Aside from my mother and myself, there are some sisters and uncles of mine who are also living on these mountains," Zhu Guor said in an ecstatic voice, then immediately flew directly toward one of the mountains as a streak of silver light. "It looks like she really is homesick. Otherwise, she wouldn't be rushing out without even taking her leave," Han Li chuckled. "Guor has never left her home for this long before, so it's only natural that she's extremely eager to be reunited with her family. Patriarch Hua," she said in a respectful voice. As soon as his voice trailed off, Han Li and Patriarch Hua, she appeared in front of the ark amid a flash of azure light, and both of them began to inspect the small mountains down below. Right at this moment, Zhu Guor disappeared into a certain spot halfway up the mountain. A faint smile appeared on Han Li's face, and he waited patiently up above. He could sense that there were some people on the mountains using treasures to spy on him and the giant ark in secret, but they didn't dare to appear before him. A short while later, a young woman in a set of simple attire suddenly emerged from the mountain that Zhu Guor had disappeared into. The woman bore a strong resemblance to Zhu Guor, and she was holding tightly onto Zhu Guor's hand as both of them emerged with teary eyes. "Junior Xianxia pays her respects to Senior Han. Guor has told me that you are her savior. I'm truly indebted to you," the woman said as she and Zhu Guor knelt down toward Han Li from down below. Letter 1D65B, letter 1D493, letter 1D4E, letter 1D65A, letter 1D500, letter 1D486, letter 1D658, letter 1D490, letter 1D4AT. Han Li's expression changed slightly as he sensed the woman's spatial tempering stage cultivation base, and he said, "You must be Zhu Guor's mother. As expected, you possess a decent cultivation base. There's no need for formalities. I came here to bring Guor back home, but also to ask you some questions." "Of course. Please come in, Senior Han. I don't have any spirit tea or spirit wine to welcome you with, but I do have some spirit fruits that are very uncommon in other realms, and I hope they'll be to your liking," Xianxia said in a respectful manner as she rose to her feet. "Please pardon my intrusion then. Huashi, you can stay out here for now," Han Li instructed. Chapter 2398, Reunion 1. Patriarch Huashi gave an affirmative response, then immediately flew back onto the ark. Meanwhile, Han Li stepped forward and immediately vanished on the spot. In the next instant, he reappeared beside Xianxia amid a burst of spatial fluctuations. Xianxia was rather surprised by this, but she immediately made an inviting hand gesture as she said, "Please follow me, Senior Han." Thus, the three of them vanished into the mountain again. At the same time, several human cultivators were gathered in a hall in the belly of a neighboring mountain, appraising everything that was happening outside through a mirror treasure. "It really is Guor. She just came down from that black ark, so that man must be the grand ascension stage being we've been hearing about," a middle-aged scholarly man said as he withdrew his gaze from the mirror. "Sister Guor has been missing for a long time. Who would have thought that she would somehow become related to that grand ascension stage being? What do we do now? Should we inform our seniors of this?" a young man asked in a hesitant manner. "HMPH, given how eye-catching that ark is, do you think our seniors wouldn't have already heard about his arrival? It's a massive opportunity for us that Guor has established ties with a grand ascension stage senior, so let's just observe for now," the scholarly man said. Everyone else nodded, in agreement to this proposed course of action. Similar scenes were being repeated in all of the other nearby mountains as well. At this point, Xianxia had already led Han Li through a bluestone corridor and arrived in a stone hall with elegant decor. A stone cauldron was situated in each corner of the hall, and within each cauldron was a stick of burning fragrant incense that was blackish yellow in color. Once Han Li took a seat on a stone chair beside a wooden table, Xianxia clapped her hands together, and a white light flashed from a side entrance of the hall, upon which a snowy white squirrel that was around a foot tall appeared, carrying a huge fruit platter with its front limbs. The squirrel had a pair of intelligent black eyes, and even though it was walking in a rather wobbly manner, it was making no sound at all and was very agile. It quickly made its way over to the stone table, then set down the fruit platter in a well-rehearsed manner. After that, it turned toward Han Li and made a string of pleasant squeaking sounds while wagging its bushy tail from side to side. "Don't be rude, Zuer. Go away for now. I'll give you a spiritual attainment pill later," Xianxia scolded. "Hee, this is a snow squirrel beast, right? How interesting. These beasts are quite rare even in the spirit realm. Looks like it's only a step away from attaining full intelligence. In that case, I'll give it a hand," Han Li said with a faint smile, then flicked a thumb-sized pill out of his sleeve. Letter 1D627, letter 1D633, letter 1D626, letter 212F, letter 1D4CC, letter 1D626, letter 1D4B8, letter 1D630, letter 1D4C2. The snow squirrel beast's eyes immediately lit up upon catching a whiff of the pill's aroma, and it instantly sprang up to swallow the pill before landing beside the stone table. It then let loose a low snarl, and all of its snowy white fur turned a bright red color while standing up on end. A string of cracks and pops rang out within its body, and it rolled onto the ground, much to Xianxia's alarm. "Senior Han, what is?" "Rest assured, Mother, Senior Han wouldn't hurt Zuer. On the contrary, Zuer is currently in a very fortunate situation," Zhu Guor said with a wide smile. All of a sudden, the snow squirrel beast's aura was noticeably elevated, and after letting loose another low snarl, it stood up again in a shaky manner, then cast its gaze toward Han Li as it said, "Thank you for granting me that medicine, Senior. Otherwise, it would have taken me at least over 1,000 more years to reach this point." You were almost there anyway. Otherwise, even with that pill, you wouldn't have been able to reach this stage," Han Li replied with a nonchalant wave of his hand. At this point, Xianxia had returned to her senses, and she also offered her gratitude toward Han Li and the snow squirrel beast's stead before dismissing the beast. The snow squirrel beast bent its front limbs and kowtowed toward Han Li, then left the hall in a rather reluctant manner. Yor has given me a brief recount of her time with you. She was truly fortunate to have encountered you even after falling into the Elder Devil realm. If you haven't saved her, this reunion would have never happened. Also, you mentioned that you had some questions to ask me. I'll be sure to answer them to the best of my abilities, Xianxia said in a respectful manner. Even though it was a coincidence that I encountered Yor in the Elder Devil realm, there was something about her that attracted my attention. By the way, I heard from Yor that you were only at the nascent soul stage, yet you've already reached the spatial tempering stage. You must have encountered some type of miraculous opportunity to facilitate such rapid progression, right? Hanley said in an unhurried manner. Prior to Gyor's disappearance, I was only at the late nascent soul stage, and I did indeed encounter a massive opportunity that allowed me to reach the spatial tempering stage in such a short time. Senior Han, would you be able to elaborate on what it is about Gyor that caught your notice? Xianxia asked. It looks like Gyor hasn't had a chance to tell you about this yet. In that case, I'd be happy to explain, Han Li said with a smile. Please go ahead, Senior, Xianxia prompted. Do you know how Gyor came into contact with the greater incarnation arts? Han Li asked. Xianxia faltered slightly upon hearing this, and she took a glance at Gyor before replying. Of course I do. I was the one who taught her the cultivation art. I see, but according to Gyor, the main cultivation art you're using isn't the greater incarnation arts. Instead, it's the very common clear chi arts. What I want to know is from whom did you obtain the greater incarnation arts from? Han Li said in a calm manner. So this is the question you have. I'm afraid this places me in a slight predicament. I obtained the greater incarnation arts from another senior, but I swore a vow not to reveal their identity to anyone without their agreement and before Gyor attains a certain level of mastery over this cultivation art, Xianxia said with a hesitant look in her eyes. I see. Let me ask you another question. Is this senior a man or a woman? Surely you can tell me at least that much. Rest assured, if that person really is the one I'm looking for, then we share an extremely close relationship, and I would love to meet them, Han Li said with a calm smile. After hesitating for a long while, Xianxia finally gritted her teeth and replied, The person who bestowed the greater incarnation arts upon me is a woman. If she really is an acquaintance of yours, then I can make an exception and inform her of your arrival to see if she would be willing to meet you. You're a Grand Ascension Stage Senior, and you saved Gyor's life, so I'm sure that Senior wouldn't blame me for this. However, if she refuses to see you, then there's nothing I can do. Of course, just inform her of my name, and regardless of the outcome, I'll be indebted to you for this, Han Li said with a smile. I wouldn't dare, Senior. What I'm doing for you completely pales in comparison to the fact that you saved Gyor's life. I'll send a message to that Senior right away. Please give me a moment, Senior Han, Xianxia said in a respectful manner, then pulled a jade pendant treasure out of her sleeve. She quickly inscribed some text upon the jade pendant with her finger, then crushed it into powder, which immediately dissipated as specks of white light. At the same time, the white-robed woman seated on the silver disc in that mysterious secret chamber suddenly opened her eyes, and she raised a hand, upon which several lines of glowing white text appeared before her amid a burst of spatial fluctuations. After only a brief examination of the message, the woman began to tremble slightly, and she swept a sleeve through the air to erase the text, then conjured up a string of glowing white text herself before that message also vanished into thin air. At the same time, several streaks of light were hurriedly flying toward the valley outside the secret chamber. Meanwhile, a faint buzzing sound rang out within Xianxia's sleeve, and she immediately pulled another jade slip out of that sleeve. There was a message inscribed upon the jade slip, and after reading the message, she turned to Han Li with an ecstatic expression. Senior Han, that senior has agreed to come and meet you tomorrow morning. A hint of barely detectable excitement flashed through Han Li's eyes upon hearing this, and he offered Xianxia her gratitude before asking her some questions about the small spirit sky. He had already learned some things about the small spirit sky through Zhu Gyor, but Xianxia was naturally more knowledgeable about this realm. Close to an hour later, their conversation concluded, and Han Li euphemistically refused Xianxia's offer to stay before departing from the hall and flying back onto the Ink Spirit Holy Ark. The Ark was hovering in midair between several mountains, and at this point, a series of high-grade human cultivators had already gathered on the nearby mountains. However, none of them dared to approach Han Li, and were lingering extremely far away in a cautious manner, appraising the giant ark from afar. Some of the more opportunistic individuals among them had sent out disciples to visit Xianxia, or visited her themselves right after Han Li left her cave abode, hoping to find out some information about Han Li from her. Chapter 2399, Reunion 2. Xianxia didn't dare to disrespect these high-grade cultivators, and there wasn't anything to hide anyway, so she willingly revealed Han Li's identity to everyone. Thus, it quickly became common knowledge in the nearby area that Han Li really was a grand ascension stage human being from the spirit realm. Everyone was extremely excited to hear this, and they were itching to visit Han Li in person on his ark. However, as soon as they reached within half a kilometer of the ark, they were kept out by an invisible restriction, and they didn't dare to try and break through the restriction by force, so they could only depart again. The next morning, several streaks of light shot forth from the distance. Han Li was meditating in the ark's cabin when he opened his eyes and made a hand seal to withdraw the invisible restriction, then emerged from the cabin before arriving at the front of the ark. The streaks of light arrived above the giant ark in a flash, then faded to reveal several human cultivators. These cultivators all stopped over 1,000 feet above the ark, with the exception of a white-robed woman who resembled a celestial maiden, who drifted down directly toward Han Li with an elated smile. As soon as Han Li caught sight of this woman, the entire world around him faded from his field of view. The woman quickly arrived in front of Han Li, then said, "You finally found your way here. I never doubted that this day would come, but I really have missed you during our time apart." "Wanner," Han Li called out in the gentlest of voices, then reached out to carefully caress the woman's silky smooth cheek, as if he were stroking a priceless treasure. Indeed, this white-robed woman was none other than Nangongwan, whom Han Li had been searching for many years, and she was also the vastly renowned fairy moon of the small spirit sky's human race. A stir immediately ran through the onlooking human cultivators upon seeing this. Nangongwan was currently the undisputed most powerful being in the human race, and that, in conjunction with her stunning beauty, made her a goddess in the eyes of countless young male cultivators. As such, everyone was stunned that she was being so intimate with a male cultivator from another realm, and there was no lack of envy and jealousy, either. Only the group of cultivators who had accompanied Nangongwan to the ark were unsurprised to see this, but they also had complex looks in their eyes. In the next instant, Nangongwan dove forward into Han Li's embrace. Half a day later, Nangongwan was nestled up in Han Li's arms with a captivating blush on her face. The two of them were lying on a pristine white stone bed in an elegantly decorated bedroom on the ark, and Nangongwan was giving Han Li a recount of her past experiences. 1. It turned out that after Han Li ascended to the spirit realm, Nangongwan also reached a bottleneck after many years of arduous cultivation. Thus, she had no choice but to follow in Han Li's footsteps and enter a certain spatial node to ascend to the spirit realm. At this point in her story, Nangongwan paused and heaved a faint sigh. "What happened? Did you encounter a spatial storm as well?" Han Li asked in a gentle voice as he inhaled her familiar scent. Nangongwan hesitated momentarily before replying, "I didn't encounter a spatial storm, but I did encounter two almighty beings battling inside the spatial node. Their battle had disrupted the spatial power within the spatial node, and that was how I fell into the small spirit sky." Han Li was quite surprised to hear this. Who would dare to battle in a spatial node? Were they grand ascension stage beings? No, they were the true spirit Rahu that you had once encountered, and another ancient true spirit being, the 100-head insect. At the time, the two of them were already on the brink of death, and the final blows that they dealt upon one another completely shattered the spatial node. Thus, both of their bodies and I fell into the small spirit sky. Somehow, I remained largely unscathed and was granted a miraculous opportunity, Nangongwan explained. "I see. Could it be that the opportunity you were referring to were those two true spirit bodies?" Han Li asked. "That's right. Both the Rahu and the 100-head insect are ranked quite high even among true spirits. Setting everything else aside, their cores contain an enormous amount of energy, making them invaluable assets to cultivators. This was how I was able to reach my current cultivation base in no more than 2,000 years, even though the spiritual chi in the small spirit sky is far less abundant than in the spirit realm. In comparison, It's far more impressive that you were able to progress to the Grand Ascension stage in the same period of time, even if you were in the spirit realm. The more I progress in my cultivation, the more I come to understand how difficult it is to reach the Grand Ascension stage. Even with those true spirit cores at my disposal, I'm still not very confident in successfully making that breakthrough, Nangongwan said as she turned to Han Li with a hint of undisguised intrigue in her eyes. I was very lucky to have progressed to the Grand Ascension stage, and I only completed the breakthrough after making extensive preparations. Back when I emerged from the spatial node at the deity transformation stage, it wasn't all smooth sailing for me. I was severely wounded in a spatial storm, and I even completely lost my magic power at one point. Thus, Han Li also began to deliver a recount of his own. Of course, there were some things that he had to keep secret, and he glossed over those matters through ambiguous wording. Even so, an amused smile still appeared on Nangongwan's face upon hearing about Han Li's encounters with Yuan Yao in the Infernal River and Violet Spirit in the Elder Devil realm. Who would have thought that Yuan Yao and Violet Spirit would also encounter significant opportunities of their own? Perhaps they'll follow you even after you ascend to the true immortal realm someday. Surely you jest, Wanner. I only encountered the two of them through sheer coincidence. As for ascending to the true immortal realm, that's going to be extremely difficult, and I have no confidence that I'll be able to achieve such a monumental feat. By the way, why did you bestow the greater incarnation arts upon Gyur? Her mother's rapid progression also had something to do with you, right? Han Li asked. Nangongwan was very familiar with Han Li's past with Violet Spirit and Yuan Yao, so she naturally wasn't jealous of them. Instead, she was more amused than anything else. Gyur is someone I discovered to have great aptitude for cultivating the greater incarnation arts, so I took her as my disciple. However, I was guarding the secret of the two true spirit cores in my possession, so it would have been quite risky for me to take a disciple on an official basis. Thus, I indirectly passed on the cultivation art to Gyur through her mother. Gyur certainly didn't disappoint me. She made very fast progress in the greater incarnation arts, but due to an accident, she fell into the Elder Devil realm. As such, I had no choice but to accept her mother as an in-name disciple. She's not as suited to cultivating the greater incarnation arts as Gyur, but she possesses outstanding cultivation aptitude. I was planning to attempt a breakthrough to the Grand Ascension stage in several centuries, and I needed someone I could trust to protect me during the breakthrough, so I used the true spirit cores to elevate her cultivation base to the spatial tempering stage in a short time. Barring any mishaps, I had intended to elevate her cultivation base all the way up to the early body integration stage before stopping, Nangongwan revealed. I see. Now that I'm here, you don't need to worry about these things. With my protection, no one will be able to disrupt your tribulation transcendence. Also, once we return to the spirit realm, I have some ways to increase your chances of making a successful breakthrough, Han Li said. What, can you really do that? Nangongwan was very surprised to hear this. Do you really think I'm only a normal Grand Ascension stage being? I don't mean to boast, but even if I were to come up against an ancient true spirit, the outcome of that battle would be very unclear, Han Li replied with a nonchalant smile. That's incredible. If I didn't know that you weren't the type to exaggerate such matters, I would be struggling to believe you. By the way, you mentioned taking me back to the spirit realm. Could it be that the passageway between the two realms still hasn't disappeared? What if someone else has already discovered its location? Nangongwan hurriedly asked. That passageway isn't going to disappear in a short time, and I concealed it with a formation, so no one would be able to detect its exact location. Is there something on your mind, Wanner? Han Li could sense that there was something that Nangongwan wanted to say. During my time in the small spirit sky, I've made some very good friends. They've all reached bottlenecks in their cultivation, and if they want to progress further, their only chance would be to go to the spirit realm. Also, there are some juniors in our human race with exceptional aptitude. If you can return to the spirit realm, then you may as well take them with you, Nangongwan replied. That wouldn't be an issue, but those people are the pillars of human race here in the small spirit sky. If I take them all away, our human race is going to be oppressed by the other races. Unfortunately, the passageway isn't stable enough for me to take the entire human race with me, Han Li said with furrowed brows. I'm aware of that as well, but now that an opportunity to go to the spirit realm has been presented, I don't think any of them would be willing to give up on it, Nangongwan sighed. All right, here's what we'll do. Get them to send several representatives to come and see me in 3 days, and I'll take care of everything, Han Li suddenly said with a smile as he stroked his own chin. https://mgur.com/a/gystzNP. Chapter 2400, Crushing All Races. 3 days later, Han Li met the 4 body integration stage human cultivators in the hall of his ark, while Nangongwan sat beside him. The 4 cultivators extended respectful bows toward Han Li as soon as they entered the room. We pay our respects to Senior Han. No need for formalities. I'm sure all of you already know about my relationship with Wanner, and similarly, I know why you've come to visit me, Han Li said. Among the 4 human cultivators, a white-haired elderly man lowered his head in a respectful manner and replied, "The 4 of us possess aptitude that isn't inferior to anyone, but we're limited by the fact that we're in the small spirit sky. If you can take us back with you to the spirit realm, we'll be forever indebted to you, Senior Han. I must thank you all for looking after Wanner for all these years, so it's no issue for me to take you back to the spirit realm. However, before we go, we have to take care of some matters in the small spirit sky first. The last thing I would want to see is for our human race to be enslaved by other races as soon as we leave," Han Li said. The 4 cultivators' hearts stirred slightly upon hearing this, and a blue-robed woman stepped forward as she said, "We'll do everything you say, Senior Han." Her 3 companions also nodded in agreement. "In that case, I'll take the lead here. When you go back, select the top 100 or so most outstanding juniors of the human race, and I'll take them along with the 4 of you back to the spirit realm. At the same time, make an announcement that I'll be returning to the small spirit sky at random points in time to take the next batch of most outstanding human juniors with me," Han Li instructed in an implacable manner. "Rest assured, Senior, we'll be sure to carry out your instructions to the best of our abilities," the white-haired elderly man hurriedly replied. "Good. Prior to returning to the spirit race, I'll be making a visit to all of the other areas of the small spirit sky to teach the other races a lesson so they wouldn't dare to target our human race. I'll also leave a few powerful treasures behind so that our human race will be able to ward off potential invasions from other races, even without any body integration stage beings among its ranks. With these measures in place, we won't have to worry about our brethren even after I take you all away," Han Li said. The 4 cultivators were naturally ecstatic to hear this, and they immediately gave affirmative responses. Indeed, with these measures implemented, the humans of the small spirit sky would have nothing to worry about. Thus, the 4 cultivators asked Han Li a few more questions about the specific details of their plan, then departed from the ark. Throughout this entire meeting, Nangongwan remained silent, but once the 4 cultivators left, she turned to Han Li with a smile and said, "It'll most likely take them quite some time to select the group of juniors for us to take back to the spirit realm. During this time, how about I accompany you to the other races? I spent most of my time in seclusion, but I'm still far more familiar with the small spirit sky than you are." "That would be great. I was also hoping that you would come with me," Han Li replied with a smile. 2 days later, Han Li instructed Patriarch Xianxia to depart from the Ink Spirit Holy Ark with a group of puppets. After scouring the small spirit sky for some special materials, he and Nangongwan also departed from the ark, while Zhu Gyur was left behind to look after the ark, having been officially accepted by Nangongwan to become her disciple. Half a month later, a strange being with the upper body of a human and a near-transparent lower body was fleeing for its life, traversing through several volcanoes that was littered with all types of round black stones. A burst of loud rumbling rang out up above, and a massive golden hand that covered virtually the entire sky appeared before descending from above, sending a burst of enormous force crashing downward. The peculiar being was extremely alarmed to see this, and it instantly accelerated by over 2-fold, covering a distance of several thousand feet in a flash. However, even though the giant golden hand seemed to be descending very slowly, it appeared above the peculiar being's head in a flash before thrusting down like lightning. Despite the semi-transparent being's special constitution and protective treasures, it was completely powerless against the giant golden hand and was crushed like a fly amid an anguished howl. The golden hand then also disappeared, following which Han Li and Nangongwan appeared in the sky above amid a burst of spatial fluctuations. Nangongwan currently wore an astonished expression as she said, "That was the most powerful being of the wind spirit race, and he was on the cusp of reaching the grand ascension stage, yet he couldn't even withstand a single attack from you. I fully believe what you said about not being an ordinary Grand Ascension stage being now. Oh, were you skeptical about my claims before this? Han Li asked as a hint of a smile appeared on his face. I believed you from the start, but how was I supposed to know that you'd be this powerful? With your powers, surely you stand at the pinnacle of even the spirit realm, Nangongwan said. You'll find out the answer to that once we return to the spirit realm. Let's go. Our next target is the most powerful being of the giant mantis race, Gang Jin, Han Li chuckled. Nangongwan merely rolled her eyes in response and raised no objections. Thus, Han Li swept a sleeve through the air, releasing a burst of golden light that swept up both of them before flying away. A month later, tens of thousands of giant gray praying mantises were rushing toward a gray light barrier in a relentless wave. There was a small black mountain that was over 1,000 feet tall hovering within the gray light barrier, and atop the small mountain stood Han Li and Nangongwan. Behind this wave of giant praying mantises was a massive human-faced insect that was 5 times larger than its brethren, and it was appraising Han Li's duel from afar with a grim expression. The giant insect had black patterns that were flashing all over its body, and under the influence of those black patterns, the bodies of the other insects were enshrouded within layers of faint crimson light. It's quite remarkable that you're able to control so many of your brethren and temporarily enhance their powers to such a significant degree, but unfortunately, this won't work against me, Han Li said in an indifferent manner. Immediately thereafter, a ball of golden lightning the size of a house emerged amid a rumbling thunderclap, then swelled drastically in size, releasing countless arcs of golden lighting that intertwined to form a massive net that descended to encompass virtually the entire insect swarm. All of the praying mantises within the net of golden lightning were instantly reduced to ashes, but the human-faced insect suddenly opened its mouth to release a ball of dark green liquid, tearing a large hole into the lightning net overhead, through which it was able to escape. A pair of azure wings appeared on its back, and it flapped its wings vigorously, preparing to unleash a secret technique to flee the scene, but right at this moment, Han Li swept a hand through the air within the gray light barrier. Spatial fluctuations erupted beside the human-faced insect, and a streak of azure sword chi emerged before slicing the insect's body apart at an incredible speed. Immediately thereafter, the streak of sword chi transformed into an azure sword barrier that swept up the two halves of the insect's body. Once the sword chi dissipated, the insect's body and its nascent soul had already been reduced to nothingness. 1.5 months later, the 3 grand elders of the most populous race in the entire small spirit sky, the Crescent Moon race, were leading over 100,000 of their brethren in battle against Han Li and Nangongwan. All of the Crescent Moon beings had arranged themselves into a formation that took advantage of the terrain, but a short while later, thousands of Crescent Moon beings were slain by Han Li, and the formation was destroyed. The 3 grand elders were also slain from afar, by few punches from Han Li. 2 months later, within a swamp that was filled with rotting vegetation and poisonous mist, the grand elder of the most mysterious race in the small spirit sky, the Night Slumber race, voluntarily pledged subordination to Han Li. At the same time, he swore a vow that so long as he lived, his race wouldn't take a single step out of the swamp. Within the short span of just a few months, Han Li and Nangongwan visited all of the foreign races in the small spirit sky, killing or taming all of the most powerful beings of those races, and it was as if doomsday had descended upon the small spirit sky. The human race was naturally ecstatic to hear this, and Han Li quickly became such a household name that even children who barely knew how to speak were already aware of his name. At this point, the human race had also selected over 100 of its most exceptional juniors after a series of fierce competitions. 3 months later, the Ink Spirit Holy Ark returned to the Green Sea, and not only was it carrying Han Li and Nangongwan, they were accompanied by the 4 body integration stage human cultivators and the juniors that had been selected. As for the green spirit beings in the Green Sea, they had already fled far away, staying thousands of kilometers away from the giant ark. Finally, the ark drew to a halt above a massive tree. Letter 1D453, letter 1D45F, letter 212F, letter 1D626, letter 1D4CC, letter 1D626, letter 1D450, letter 2134, letter 1D4C2. Han Li cast his gaze downward before making a hand seal, then pointed a finger toward the tree, upon which the tree abruptly vanished to reveal a ball of rainbow light. Let's go. I wonder when we'll return to this realm next, Han Li murmured to himself, following which the giant black arc sped forward at his behest, shrinking down rapidly mid-flight before vanishing into the ball of light. Chapter 24:01 Crisis on the Blood Sky Continent. In the air above a certain region of the sea in the spirit realm, two groups of whale-like low-grade sea beasts were engaged in a fierce battle for some unknown reason. Sections of beast carcasses were occasionally rising up out of the seawater, and the nearby area of the sea had been completely stained red. All of a sudden, an extremely fearsome aura erupted from the seabed, and the two groups of sea beasts immediately ceased their battle before fleeing in different directions in an alarmed manner. In the blink of an eye, peace and quiet returned. Right at this moment, the seawater parted, and a giant black arc emerged on the surface of the ocean. The arc was over 10,000 feet in length, resembling a massive black beast. The deck of the ark was packed with human cultivators, most of whom appeared to be quite young, and they were all extremely excited as they took in their surroundings. There were also some cultivators who had closed their eyes and seemed to be sensing something in silence. The Ink Spirit Holy Ark had returned from the small spirit sky, and in the instant that it did so, the passageway in the form of the ball of rainbow light finally crumbled. Thus, if Han Li wanted to return to the small spirit sky in the future, then he would have to seek out another corresponding ancient altar for a chance to do so. At this moment, Han Li and Nangongwan were standing side by side at the front of the ark, and everyone else gave them a wide berth out of respect. So this is the spirit realm. As expected, the purity of the spiritual chi here really is far superior to that of the small spirit sky. Only in a place like this will cultivators like us have a chance at making further progress and strive toward ascension to the true immortal realm, Nangongwan murmured to herself. The spirit realm is indeed a superior place for cultivation than the small spirit sky, but there still aren't that many grand ascension stage beings in this realm. For weaker races like our human race, having one or two grand ascension stage beings would be enough to claim a spot in the spirit realm. However, there are some super races that possess numbers of grand ascension stage beings in the double digits. Of course, there are disparities in power even among grand ascension stage beings, and the most powerful grand ascension stage beings can match true spirits in battle and easily slay several ordinary grand ascension stage beings at once, Han Li said with a smile. During his time in the small spirit sky, he had already given everyone a rough description of the spirit realm and the human race here, so they weren't completely oblivious to this realm. Judging from the confidence you're exuding, you must be one of those anomalies among grand ascension stage beings. I didn't think that our human race would be in such a bad situation in the spirit realm, but surely the situation is going to improve with your efforts, Nangongwan sighed. I'm confident in my ability to match any grand ascension stage being in battle, but I've only recently progressed to the grand ascension stage myself, so it'll take some time for me to lead the human race on a resurgence, Han Li said. Of course, I trust that you'll definitely be able to accomplish this someday, Nangongwan said as she turned to Han Li with a gentle look in her eyes. I certainly hope so, Han Li replied. How are we going to return to the Tian Yuan continent? Are we going to cross the sea? Nangongwan asked. That won't be necessary. I'm familiar with the manager of the He Lion Trade Guild on the nearby Blood Sky continent. He should be able to arrange for a teleportation formation to send us back to the Tian Yuan continent, Han Li replied. That would be best. I really want to see the habitat of our human race in this spirit realm, Nangongwan said with a smile. Han Li merely smiled and offered no response, then directed the Ink Spirit Holy Ark toward the Blood Sky continent. Several months later, the Ink Spirit Holy Ark arrived above a certain major seaside city on the Blood Sky continent, and it was hovering in midair above a triangular building. Han Li and Nangongwan were situated in the hall of the building, speaking to an uneasy middle-aged man who was sweating profusely. Letter 1D557, letter 1D42B, letter 1D41E, letter 1D556, letter 1D568, letter 1D41E, letter 1D41C, letter 1D5FC, letter 1D696. What? You're telling me that fellow Taoist Bai Ying has already perished and your trade guild has withdrawn most of its forces? Are you sure you're not playing a prank on me? How could this have happened in such a short time? Han Li interrogated with a cold expression. I wouldn't dare lie to you, especially not about something like this, Senior Han. Almost everyone on the Blood Sky continent is already aware of this. If you don't believe me, you can go ask anyone else, the middle-aged man hurriedly replied with a wry smile. How was that man able to kill so many Grand Ascension stage beings at once? It's downright unimaginable no matter how I look at it. Has your trade guild managed to ascertain that man's identity yet? Han Li asked. I'm afraid I don't have the answer to that. Perhaps our headquarters will have more accurate information, but I'm only responsible for this branch, so I don't know much at all, the middle-aged man replied after a brief moment of hesitation. You don't know much? That means you know something, so go ahead and tell us what you know. Surely my Dao companion is qualified to hear this information, Nangongwan said with a smile. Han Li had naturally already told her about the man who had performed several large-scale blood sacrifices on the Blood Sky continent, and she had been given a massive fright upon hearing about such a fearsome figure. Of course, if Senior Han wishes to hear the information I have, then I'll tell you everything I know, the middle-aged man hurriedly replied. Han Li's expression eased slightly upon hearing this, and he nodded in response. Nangongwan also put on a serious expression, as she prepared to listen to what the man had to say. The middle-aged man reflexively lowered his voice as he revealed, the circumstances surrounding that man are very peculiar. He seems to have initially appeared on the Blood Sky continent, but it can be ascertained through his cultivation arts and abilities that he's definitely not actually from this continent, or even this realm for that matter. Thus, there are circulating theories, stating that he could be a powerful being from another realm, or a true immortal who descended from a higher realm. According to the information I've received, I think the latter is most likely to be true. Nangongwan's expression immediately changed slightly upon hearing this, and even Han Li was quite stunned by this revelation. How can you be so sure that this man is a true immortal? Apparently, there was a witness who saw that man in battle from afar, and he seemed to have incurred backlash from the power of the realm in the form of chains of laws, which had bound his physical body and sealed away most of his powers. If this man isn't a true immortal, then how could that have happened? There are some extremely fearsome beings that exist in more powerful realms, but none of them are capable of killing so many Grand Ascension stage beings at once, especially when there are beings of Master Bai Ying's caliber among them. Even the ancient true spirits, heavenly phoenixes and true dragons, shouldn't be capable of this, the middle-aged man analyzed. If those really were chains of laws, then your analysis is most likely correct. However, I'm still rather skeptical that a true immortal would descend into our spirit realm. I'll pay the headquarters of your trade guild a visit to make sense of the situation. By the way, now that fellow Taoist Bai Ying has passed away, who's managing the trade guild? And where is that man now? Is he still performing blood sacrifices? Han Li asked. Our trade guild is currently being joint managed by several elders, and a new manager will be selected in the future. As for that man, he's continuing to perform blood sacrifices, and almost all of the living beings in the eastern region of the Blood Sky continent have been wiped out. However, around 2 months ago, he forced his way into the Blood Mark sect and slew 2 of the sect's Grand Ascension stage seniors along with thousands of disciples, then departed using the sect's intercontinental teleportation formation. The middle-aged man replied. Han Li and Nangongwan's expressions both changed slightly upon hearing this, and the former asked, Intercontinental teleportation formation. Do you know which continent he went to? According to our investigation, he seemed to have traveled to the Thunder continent, the middle-aged man replied. Han Li's expression eased slightly upon hearing this, but the concern in his eyes lingered as he asked the middle-aged man a few more questions before departing from the hall with Nangongwan, flying back to the giant black arc in the sky. In the air above a boundless green lake on the Thunder continent, a translucent thread was flying through the air at an incredible speed. In the blink of an eye, it had already covered a distance of tens of thousands of feet, and it continued onward without pause. All of a sudden, an island with sparse greenery appeared up ahead, and the translucent thread abruptly descended toward it. A huge crater suddenly appeared on the summit of the only mountain on the island, and a white-robed young man appeared alongside a silver-robed woman, the former of which was half-knelt on the ground. We'll rest for 4 hours, then continue, the white-robed young man said after throwing up a mouthful of blood, then rising to his feet in the crater in an unsteady manner. Is 4 hours going to be enough? You're already severely depleted. There's no way you can continue to frequently unleash that secret technique like this, the silver-robed woman said. HMPH, do you have a better plan? I don't know what's going on with that bastard, but he's suddenly entirely fixated on hunting us down rather than performing more blood sacrifices. If he hadn't suddenly arrived at the blood-marked sect before I even had a chance to correctly calibrate the teleportation formation, we wouldn't have ended up here on the Thunder Continent, the white-robed young man harumphed coldly in response. Chapter 2402, Diverting the Enemy. These two were none other than the six-winged frost centipede and the ice phoenix, who had been pursued all the way onto the Thunder Continent by Ma Liang. We've most likely truly enraged him by luring him into that trap set by the Blood Dao sects on the Blood Sky continent. In any case, there's no point in talking about that now. Do you have any other ways to shake off that man? It won't be long before he catches up to us again, the Ice Phoenix replied. If I did, do you think I would have persisted with this method for so long? Hee, looks like we're a pair of tragic lovebirds, the six-winged frost centipede chuckled. Tui, who wants to be lovebirds with you? Sit down, I'll use a secret technique to assist you, the Ice Phoenix instructed. The six-winged frost centipede faltered slightly upon hearing this. What could you possibly do to help me? My cultivation base may be far inferior to yours, but I'm still a descendant of the five-colored heavenly phoenix, and I possess some innate secret techniques that are beyond your imagination, the Ice Phoenix replied in a proud manner. The six-winged frost centipede's expression changed slightly upon hearing this, and he said, in that case, I guess it couldn't hurt to try. After that, he sat down in the crater with his legs crossed and closed his eyes without any hesitation. The Ice Phoenix heaved a faint sigh before appearing behind him and also taking a seat. She then opened her mouth to expel a cloud of white glacial chi that was flashing incessantly, and there was a thumb-sized five-colored bead within the cloud. Immediately thereafter, she made a hand seal, and a massive Ice Phoenix projection emerged behind her. The projection let loose a clear cry, then spread its wings to release countless threads of translucent light, all of which vanished into the bead in a flash. All of a sudden, layers of extremely rich energy began to appear around the bead, and the energy was so dense that it had attained a virtually viscous liquid state. The Ice Phoenix gritted her teeth as she pointed a finger at the bead, and it immediately vanished into the six-winged frost centipede's back in a flash. After that, the Ice Phoenix began to chant an incantation while making a rapid string of hand seals, and a layer of translucent light began to emanate from her body. At the same time, her face gradually took on a translucent quality, presenting a very peculiar sight to behold. The six-winged frost centipede currently felt as if there were countless wisps of glacial energy flowing from a certain point on his back into all of his meridians, then converged toward his dantian. At the center of his dantian was a very exhausted nascent soul, but it was immediately reinvigorated and burst into celebration upon receiving this influx of energy. This is your essential power. You're able to inject your essence directly into me. The six-winged frost centipede's eyes immediately sprang open with surprise and elation. It's all thanks to the fact that we're both glacial beings and our essential abilities are quite similar. Otherwise, even if I were willing to offer you my essential power, I wouldn't be able to do so, the Ice Phoenix replied in an expressionless manner. With the injection of your essential power, I'll be able to unleash my secret technique to continue in our escape. However, your cultivation base is quite lackluster, so you won't be able to do this many more times. We have to think of another way to shake off that bastard, the six-winged frost centipede said as a cold light flashed through his eyes. The Ice Phoenix's expression changed slightly upon hearing this. Have you thought of something? I had devised a plan to divert the enemy, but he was pursuing us too closely, so I never had a chance to implement it. However, now that you've bought me some time with this influx of essential power, there's a chance we'll be able to do it, the six-winged frost centipede revealed. Then what are you waiting for? Hurry up and recover your energy so we can implement the plan, the Ice Phoenix urged. That's precisely what I was planning to do. Once I recover somewhat, we'll travel to the nearest city with a teleportation formation, then get to the territory of the Jiao Kai race as soon as possible. I've heard that the Jiao Kai race is one of the premier superpowers on the Thunder Continent with many grand ascension stage beings among its ranks. They should have a decent chance of stalling that madman, the six-winged frost centipede replied. A month later, one of the main cities of the Jiao Kai race, Spirit Cap City, was completely inundated by a boundless river of blood. Countless Jiao Kai beings were struggling and wailing desperately, but all to no avail, and they could only look on helplessly as their blood and flesh slowly disintegrated to fuse as one with the river of blood. In the air above the river hovered a black-robed young man, and the bodies of hundreds of high-grade Jiao Kai beings were hovering beside him. One of the bodies had had the top of its head opened up, and its cranial cavity was completely empty. All of a sudden, a rumbling thunderclap rang out in the distant sky, and a green cloud appeared before rushing over as a sea of mist. The black-robed young man's expression remained completely unchanged as he cast his gaze toward the sea of mist. In the blink of an eye, the sea of green mist reached the river of blood, then transformed into a giant green devil that was over 10,000 feet tall with a single straight horn on its head, green devilish eyes all over its body, and a shimmering golden pagoda in its hand. How dare you perform a blood sacrifice in Spirit Cap City? Do you not fear the dire consequences of your actions? And where is fellow Taoist Xianxia? Why is he allowing you to do this? The green devil roared with an enraged look in its thousands of devilish eyes. Xianxia, are you talking about this piece of trash here who detonated his own nascent soul? The young man asked as he pointed at the body with the empty cranial cavity. That's impossible. Fellow Taoist Xiang's powers are second to none, and he has the formation of Spirit Cap City to assist him. How could he have suffered such a gruesome fate? The green devil roared in an alarmed and enraged voice. There's no need to be so surprised. If you don't hand over the two people I'm looking for, you'll also end up like him, the young man said, and his expression suggested that the green devil was already as good as dead in his eyes. The green devil's expression changed slightly upon hearing this. Which two people are you looking for? These two, have you seen them? The young man swept a sleeve through the air as he spoke, releasing a scroll that slowly unfurled itself, revealing a pair of extremely lifelike portraits of the six-winged frost centipede and the ice phoenix. They don't look like beings of our Jiao Kai race. How could I have possibly seen them before? How are they related to you, and why are you searching for them in our race? The green devil asked. I'm not very happy with that answer. Also, I'm the one asking questions here, not you. I'll give you 3 days to find these two people. If you can't do that, then I'll sacrifice your entire Jiao Kai race city by city, the young man said in an unhurried manner as he pointed a finger at the scroll to withdraw it up his own sleeve again. The green devil was enraged to the point of bursting into laughter upon hearing this. You want to sacrifice our entire race? Haha, never have I heard something so insolent before. I can tell you now that not only do I not know these two people, even if I did, there's no way I would hand them over to you. In that case, you can stay here and become a part of my blood sacrifice. The young man said. A hint of mockery appeared on his face. As soon as his voice trailed off, a rumbling boom rang out within the river of blood down below, and around a dozen crimson chains shot out before hurtling directly toward the green devil. In retaliation, the green devil let loose a thunderous roar and hurled his golden pagoda through the air. The pagoda swelled to countless times its original size mid-flight before crashing down toward the young man, and at the same time, countless threads of green light erupted out of the devilish eyes all over its body to oppose the oncoming crimson chains. Thus, a ferocious battle ensued above the river of blood, but it didn't last very long. An earth-shattering boom rang out as all of the green mist was scattered by some type of invisible power. The green devil was already nowhere to be seen, and in its place was a pile of countless shattered green crystals. As for the young man, a ball of green light had appeared in his hand, and within the ball of light was a nascent soul that was struggling frantically in a horrified manner, but was unable to escape. A cold smile appeared on the young man's face as he appraised the nascent soul, and he thrust a finger into the ball of light, striking the nascent soul's head with unerring accuracy. The nascent soul immediately let loose an anguished howl and fell completely still. Only after a full 15 minutes had passed by did the young man withdraw his finger from the ball of light, then tossed it down into the river of blood below. In the next instant, a buzzing sound rang out from the river of blood, and it began to surge toward a certain direction. Meanwhile, a pair of ordinary-looking Jiao Kai beings were situated countless kilometers away, fleeing as quickly as they could toward another major city of the Jiao Kai race. The duo was comprised of a man and a woman, and the latter sighed, "I didn't think this method would be so effective. Who would have thought that that madman would immediately sacrifice the entire Spirit Cap City upon his arrival? Even the Grand Ascension State, Jiao Kai being guarding the city, had his nascent soul torn out and destroyed." Chapter 2403, Disappearance. That's not all that surprising. Do you really think he would have failed to see through the fact that we had possessed this pair of Jiao Kai beings? He was simply looking for an excuse to perform a blood sacrifice anyway, so he's going along with our plan for now. With his powers as a true immortal, There's no way an ordinary Grand Ascension stage being would have been able to pose any resistance to him. The male Jiao being replied with a cold smile. That's true. What's most unexpected to me is that you know such a profound possession secret technique that can temporarily shake off that man's surveillance. If we had used this secret technique earlier, we wouldn't have been reduced to such a sorry state, the female Jiao being said. You don't know anything. This secret technique is different from normal possession techniques as it involves completely planting one's soul into another physical body. It's extremely dangerous to use, and the success rate for me is only around 70%. On top of that, once this secret technique is unleashed, my original body will have to go into hibernation. During that time, it'll be carried by the newly possessed body, and in this new body my powers will be severely restricted. As such, I wouldn't take such a huge risk by resorting to this technique if I had any other choice. As for why it was able to shake off that man's surveillance, I presume that's because this is also a secret technique from the true immortal realm. This is something that I didn't anticipate. I had prepared another course of action to shake him off, but that won't be necessary now, the male Jiao being explained. These two were none other than the six-winged frost centipede and the ice phoenix, who had possessed a pair of Jiao beings and temporarily shaken Ma Liang off their trail. The ice phoenix was rather taken aback to hear this. How did you come into possession of this immortal secret technique? Back in the primordial world, I stumbled upon the cave abode of a foreign being and found a page of the golden jade tome that contained the secret technique. Unfortunately, the complete secret technique can only be unleashed by a true immortal. This possession technique is actually only a small part of it, and it was the only part I could cultivate. Also, this possession can only last half a day before we're forced to return to our original bodies. Otherwise, there would be a decent chance that we could just get away like this, the six-winged frost centipede replied in a slightly forlorn manner. So be it. It's already a pleasant surprise that you know this immortal secret technique that can temporarily shake that man off our trail. All we have to do is make it to another major city of the Jiao race while this secret technique is still in effect. I'm sure the Grand Ascension stage beings of the Jiao race wouldn't just allow that man to do as he pleases. As long as they can stall that madman for a while longer, we'll be able to find another super teleportation formation and return to the Tian Yuan continent. Once that happens, it'll be very difficult for him to track us down again unless he immediately follows us into the formation. If worse comes to worst, we can go and find fellow Taoist Han. Brother Han was able to slay even the Stembora Queen in the past. Perhaps with his powers, he'll have a way to remove the tracking marks planted in our bodies, the Ice Phoenix said. The six-winged frost centipede immediately flared up with rage upon hearing this. There's no way I would turn to Han Li. I would sooner die. HMPH, given how much you've enraged that madman, if we get captured, we'll most likely suffer a fate even worse than death, the Ice Phoenix countered in a cold voice. We'll discuss this matter when we need to. Perhaps we'll be able to completely shake off that madman once we return to the Tian Yuan continent, the six-winged frost centipede said as he reverted back to a calm expression. All right, in that case, we'll take things one step at a time. Let's focus on getting to the next major city for now. I can already sense that this body of mine won't be able to last much longer. That madman is going to be able to track us down again very soon, the Ice Phoenix replied. Thus, the two of them sped onward as a pair of balls of light. Half a month later, Ma Liang was just preparing to perform a blood sacrifice in another major city of the Jiao race when he was ambushed by 6 Grand Ascension stage Jiao beings. Ma Liang had already slaughtered countless Jiao beings, including 2 Grand Ascension stage elders, so these Grand Ascension stage beings naturally had no intention of trying to settle this peacefully. Instead, as soon as they appeared, they immediately activated an extremely powerful restriction. On this occasion, Ma Liang didn't use that talisman to remove the chains of laws within his body. Instead, he engaged the 6 Grand Ascension stage beings in a fierce battle with his handicapped powers. All 6 of these Grand Ascension stage Jiao beings were far more powerful than the average Grand Ascension stage being, and with this restriction to assist them, they could virtually dominate the entire Thunder continent. However, even though Ma Liang's powers were severely restricted, he was able to match them with his immortal secret techniques and treasures from the true immortal realm. Thus, the two sides were evenly matched, and the battle only became more and more intense. In the end, the battle lasted close to a day, and it concluded with the deaths of 4 of the Grand Ascension Stage Jiao Kai beings, while the other 2 fled with severe injuries. However, at the final juncture, the Grand Ascension Stage Jiao Kai beings had detonated several incomplete profound heavenly treasures, catching Ma Liang by surprise and injuring him in the process. In a fit of fury, Ma Liang sacrificed 3 more major cities of the Jiao Kai race. In this situation, what remained of the higher-ups of the Jiao Kai race were forced to summon 3 true spirits from another space using an ancient contract. These 3 true spirits, namely the Hoof Dragon, the Grand Sparrow, and the Yang Deer, had been worshipped by the Jiao Kai race since ancient times, and they engaged Ma Liang in another epic battle. This battle lasted for 3 days, and the entire region within a radius of hundreds of thousands of kilometers was affected. Once the battle concluded, the nearby Jiao Kai beings immediately rushed over, only to find that the 3 true spirits and Ma Liang had all disappeared. The Jiao Kai race attempted to use various secret techniques to contact the 3 true spirits, all to no avail, and thus, they were left at a loss for what to do. At this point, Ma Liang's egregious actions on the Blood Sky continent finally reached the ears of the people on the Thunder continent, and everyone was plunged into a state of perpetual fear, given that Ma Liang had disappeared and was potentially still out there somewhere. As for the 6-winged frost centipede and the ice phoenix, they were naturally ecstatic to hear about Ma Liang's disappearance, and they immediately implemented their plan. Over a month later, the 2 of them entered the territory of another major race, then gained access to their super teleportation formation in exchange for some compensation, thereby allowing them to return to the Tian Yuan continent. Meanwhile, Han Li and the others had also appeared in a giant teleportation formation in a certain corner of the Tian Yuan continent. The formation was situated in a large hall with several tens of guards nearby, and they seemed to have expected the arrival of Han Li and his entourage. The leader of the guards immediately stepped forward in a respectful manner and said, "I've been instructed to come here and meet you, Senior Han. Master Ming Zun has already been waiting for a long time, and he would like to meet you." "I certainly can't refuse an invitation from fellow Taoist Ming Zun. Go ahead and lead the way. Wanner, you can take a rest here for now," Han Li said. "Don't worry about us. We'll look after ourselves," Nang Gongwan replied in a reassuring manner. Thus, Nang Gongwan and the others exited the teleportation formation and sat down to meditate outside the hall. Meanwhile, Han Li was being led by the guard toward a stone cabin situated in a nearby lush forest. Before Han Li had even arrived at the stone cabin, the door was opened on its own and Ming Zun's voice rang out from inside. "You're finally here, fellow Taoist Han. Please come in. I've been waiting for you for quite some time now." "Sorry to keep you waiting, fellow Taoist," Han Li said as he strode into the stone cabin. The interior of the cabin was very sparsely furnished, with only a yellow wooden table and several sandalwood chairs. A red-haired elderly man was seated on one of the chairs, inspecting a white jade slip in his hand. "Please take a seat, fellow Taoist Han, and do forgive me for telling Bai Ying about you," Ming Zun said with a smile as he cast his gaze toward Han Li. "It's all right. In any case, fellow Taoist Bai Ying has already passed away, so there's no need to discuss something like this," Han Li said with a shake of his head, then sat down across from Ming Zun. "Never did I think that Bai Ying would go to the other side ahead of me. Our trade guild has most likely already withdrawn its force significantly on the Blood Sky continent," Ming Zun sighed. "That is indeed the case, but with several elders managing the trade guild together, I'm sure nothing will go wrong. It was all thanks to those elders that I was able to return to the Tian Yuan continent so quickly," Han Li replied. "I certainly hope that's the case. How much do you know about the culprit behind the blood sacrifices, fellow Taoist Han?" Ming Zun asked with a serious expression. "The elders of your trade guild haven't provided me with a lot of information, but what I do know is that he's definitely not inferior in power to the likes of the Stembor Queen," Han Li replied with a grim expression. Chapter 2404, Ming Zun's Proposal. Ming Zun nodded in response. "That's true, but have you heard about the latest news regarding that man from the Thunder continent?" Han Li's expression changed slightly upon hearing this. "The Thunder continent? Could it be that he's done something there as well?" "Indeed, he has. In fact, he's created an even bigger stir on the Thunder continent than on the Blood Sky continent," Ming Zun said with a dark expression before tossing a jade slip toward Han Li. Han Li drew the jade slip into his own grasp, then immediately pressed it against his own forehead before injecting his spiritual sense into it. Moments later, his expression darkened further as he removed the jade slip from his forehead. I didn't think that he would target the Jiao Kai race. What's the deal with his disappearance? It's very simple. After battling those three ancient true spirits, he suddenly vanished from the Thunder Continent, and no one has been able to track him down, Ming Zun replied with a hint of concern in his eyes. Han Li was instantly able to glean something from Ming Zun's expression, and he asked, "Has your trade guild already discovered something?" "Your wisdom is truly unmatched, fellow Taoist. Indeed, following the conclusion of the battle, our guild sent out some people to investigate the battlefield, and there, they discovered very faint spatial fluctuations, as well as signs suggesting that the nearby space had been recently torn apart. Unfortunately, no further leads were unearthed," Ming Zun replied. "In that case, he's most likely not dead. He's merely gone into hiding using his spatial powers," Han Li mused. "That's most likely the case," Ming Zun replied. "So what is your main concern, and why have you invited me here?" Han Li asked. "Surely you already know the answer to those questions, Brother Han. That man has appeared on both the Blood Sky Continent and the Thunder Continent, so it wouldn't be strange for him to come to our Tian Yuan Continent next. As one of the most powerful beings in this entire spirit realm, aren't you planning to get involved in this? Aren't you concerned that this disaster could befall your human race someday? Even the Jiao Kai race has been significantly debilitated by that man. If he sets his sights on the smaller races on our Tian Yuan Continent, then those races will truly be in danger of being wiped out," Ming Zun replied with a smile. There are so many races on the Tian Yuan Continent. Why would that man just so happen to target a weak race like our human race? I think the larger races will attract his attention far more so than our human race," Han Li chuckled in response. "Through our analysis of the blood sacrifices that man has performed, we've discovered that he doesn't seem to have any clear targets, and any region with a large concentration of living beings could fall prey to him. Your human race isn't all that renowned, but that's only because it had been lacking a top-tier grand ascension state being in the past. In terms of absolute population and population density, your human race ranks quite high on the Tian Yuan continent. Are you sure that madman won't set his sights there?" Ming Zun asked. Han Li's smile completely faded upon hearing this. "Are you threatening me?" "Absolutely not, I'm merely telling you the truth. Come to think of it, that man does seem to have some ties with you, so the probability that he'll target the human race isn't as low as you think," Ming Zun said. Han Li faltered slightly upon hearing this. "What do you mean by that?" "Do you recognize the two people on these portraits, fellow Taoist Han?" Ming Zun flipped a hand over as he spoke, producing a jade slip that released a burst of light at his behest. Within the light was a pair of portraits depicting a man and a woman. Han Li's eyes narrowed slightly upon seeing this. Ming Zun was completely unsurprised by Han Li's reaction, and he said, "Looks like you really do recognize these two people. Would you be able to tell me who they are?" "I only recognize one of them. That woman is an ice phoenix and she's not a human, but she does share some ties with me. How has she gotten involved in this matter, and who is that man?" Han Li asked as he appraised the pair of portraits. "I'm not sure who that man is, either. All I know is that he's most likely from the Tian Yuan continent. Furthermore, according to our trade guild's investigation, his true form is a six-winged frost centipede, and even among Grand Ascension stage beings, he can be considered to be quite powerful. He and the Ice Phoenix seem to have irked that madman somehow, and they've been pursued all the way from the Blood Sky Continent to the Thunder Continent. I suspect the two of them may have even played a role in that man's decision to target the Jiao Kai race," Ming Zun replied with a serious expression. A hint of surprise appeared on Han Li's face upon hearing this. "He's a six-winged frost centipede, and he's being pursued by that man." "Oh, have you recalled who this man could be, fellow Taoist?" Ming Zun asked. "If I'm not mistaken, this man seems to also be an acquaintance of mine, but I didn't think that he would become like this," Han Li replied in a contemplative manner. "So these two are both acquaintances of yours. In that case, your human race really is in grave peril. Once that madman learns about their ties with you, he'll most likely pay your human race a visit," Ming Zun said. "That's a slight exaggeration, but it does seem that I won't be able to remain uninvolved in this any longer. Where are the two of them right now? Are they still on the Thunder Continent?" Han Li asked as his brows furrowed slightly. "According to our trade guild's investigation, they seem to have disappeared not long after that pursuer vanished. You're familiar with the two of you. Where do you think they could go? Ming Zun asked. That's hard to say. They are acquaintances of mine, but I haven't met them in many years, Han Li replied with a shake of his head. Could they possibly return to the Tian Yuan continent to find you? Ming Zun asked. That is a possibility, and one that would be quite troublesome if it were to eventuate. By the way, how likely do you think it is that their pursuer is a true immortal? Han Li suddenly asked. I think it's virtually set in stone that he's a true immortal, Ming Zun replied after a brief moment of contemplation. How are you so sure? Han Li asked as he stroked his own chin. It's simple. That man has unleashed several types of secret techniques and abilities from the true immortal realm. That is something that I can vouch of, as my ancestors were direct lineal descendants to true immortals. Some of the cultivation arts and secret techniques of the true immortal realm have been passed down to our realm, but there are some very detailed descriptions recorded, Ming Zun replied with a wry smile. I see. In that case, that man must be a true immortal. That's certainly not a piece of good news. Surely you're not expecting me to face a true immortal on my own, Han Li said. Of course not, fellow Taoist Han. I only want to unite everyone for the sake of our Tian Yuan continent. Our spirit realm has already been out of contact with the true immortal realm for countless years, and we don't know what objective this true immortal has. If he's going to continue this killing spree, then we have to join forces and force him to leave or completely seal him away. Otherwise, we'll be picked off one by one eventually, Ming Zun said as a cold look flashed through his eyes. The Blood Dao sects of the Blood Sky continent have already tried to join forces, but they were all vanquished anyway, Han Li said. That's because they underestimated their opponent. Among the 14 Grand Ascension stage beings they gathered, only a few of them can truly be considered to be quite formidable, so their defeat was inevitable. In contrast, I'm recruiting all of the most powerful beings on our Tian Yuan continent for this cause, and our trade guild will even summon some powerful true spirits to assist us, so our victory will be assured. Regardless of how powerful that true immortal is, there's no way he can contend with all of us with most of his power sealed away, Ming Zun replied. Will you really be able to assemble such a formidable lineup? Who else has agreed to join this cause? Han Li asked. Aside from yourself, most of the fellow Taoists we've contacted have agreed to participate in this cause if that true immortal sets foot on our Tian Yuan continent. As for the rest of them, I'm sure they'll eventually also agree after weighing up their options. After all, no one wants to see a true immortal doing as he pleases on this continent, Ming Zun replied. In that case, I'll agree to your offer for now. However, if you can't find sufficient powerful beings to join this cause, then I'll immediately turn you down, Han Li said after mulling over the proposal. Ming Zun was ecstatic to hear this, and he replied, Haha, rest assured, brother Han. If I couldn't gather enough people, I wouldn't be willing to risk my own life either. Take this transmission talisman. I'll inform you if I receive any news about that true immortal. He raised a hand as he spoke, releasing a silver talisman out of his sleeve, which was drawn into Han Li's grasp before being stowed away. Chapter 2405, Chains of Laws. After that, a few more subjects were discussed before Han Li finally departed. Moments later, a giant black ark flew away into the distance above the stone hall, and Han Li was standing at the front of the ark, looking into the distance with a contemplative expression. The sound of footsteps rang out behind him, and Nangong Wan made his way over to him before asking in a gentle voice, Did fellow Taoist Ming have something important to discuss with you? That's a long story. Let's go back to the cabin and I'll tell you about it there, Han Li replied as he turned around with a wry smile. Several months later, in a certain mysterious space, there were 3 giant beasts, each of which was biting tightly onto a purplish golden chain with uneasy looks on their faces. The other ends of the 3 chains were bound around a black-robed young man, and even though he seemed to have been immobilized by the chains, there was no fear in his eyes at all. Instead, he was appraising the 3 beasts around him with a mocking expression. After a long while, the black-robed young man said in a completely emotionless voice, If the 3 of you subject to me now, my offer still stands. I'll spare your lives and take you as my spirit servants, then bring you to the true immortal realm with me once I finish what I came here to do. Otherwise, once the chains of laws unleash their backlash, the 3 of you will all perish. That's impossible. The backlash from these chains of laws should only target a true immortal like you. Why will we be impacted as well? Even if we're going to be affected, you'll still be the one who suffers the brunt of the backlash, and the 3 of us will be able to survive without any issues. A deer-bear hybrid beast roared in an enraged voice. Which idiot gave you this method to activate the chains of laws? You clearly don't know what you're doing, yet you dare to use this on me. If I hadn't reacted quickly enough and dragged you with me into this spatial treasure, we would have been sitting ducks. Now, we can only wait for the backlash from the power of laws. Mere true spirits like you can't even begin to comprehend how fearsome this power is. Even a small portion of it will be enough to instantly reduce the three of you to nothingness. You're already beginning to sense your true essence being slowly devoured by the chains of laws, right? My immortal body is far more powerful than yours, and I have several immortal treasures to protect me, so I'll be able to easily survive and recover from this, Ma Liang said with a derisive smile. Nonsense. This method was bestowed upon us by the Golden Dragon King. How could it be incorrect? Don't think that you can sow dissension among us so easily. If what you're saying really is the truth, then you would just wait in silence. Why would you tell us all of this? The deer-bear hybrid beast retorted. If it weren't for the fact that I have something that I need to do, I wouldn't be wasting any time with the three of you. So be it, I'll up the stakes. If you're willing to subject to me, not only will I take you to the true immortal realm, I'll grant you a true soul pill so you can attain the soul of a true immortal. However, this offer only stands for half a day. You won't be getting anything out of me once that time limit expires, Ma Liang said as a hint of impatience appeared in his eyes. A true soul pill. The other two beasts' hearts jolted upon hearing this, and a hint of greed surfaced in their eyes. It was clear that this pill was extremely tempting to them. You'll either perish here or be granted a true soul pill and be taken to the true immortal realm. The choice is yours. As for your contract with the Jiaokai race and all of your other ties with this realm, I can help you sever them. I'm not going to say anything else from now on, Ma Liang said with a cold smile before closing his eyes, seemingly to meditate. The three giant beasts exchanged a glance upon hearing this, and none of them said anything. As time passed, the rate at which their true essence was being devoured by the chains of laws was steadily accelerating. They had already unleashed countless types of abilities and secret techniques to try and stop this process, but that only made the situation worse, and they were truly beginning to panic now. Once the backlash from the chains of laws truly arrived, their powers would have been whittled down significantly, and there was no chance that they could survive. The expressions of the giant sparrow and the cow-headed beast were gradually becoming more and more hesitant. The deer-headed beast could see the changes in the expressions of its companions, and it tugged violently on the chain in its mouth as it snarled. You too aren't actually tempted by his offer, are you? Of course not. True soul pills are indeed extremely precious, but there's no way I'd become anyone's servant. Having said that, the backlash from these chains of laws really isn't something to be ignored. After all, our lives on the line here, the cow-headed beast said in a hesitant manner. That's right. We forged an ancient contract with the Jiao Kai race using the power of a profound heavenly treasure, but we have no obligation to give our lives here, so we have to think carefully about this, the giant sparrow chimed in. I understand. This is indeed something that we need to discuss carefully. However, before that, I have a suggestion that will be greatly beneficial to all of us. The deer-headed beast sighed in a resigned manner, then suddenly began to transmit its voice toward its two companions while slowly drifting toward the giant sparrow. Stop, you can tell us what you want to say from over there. There's no need to come closer, the giant sparrow yelled as a cautious look appeared in its eyes. The deer-headed beast's expression immediately darkened slightly upon hearing this. Do you not trust me, fellow Taoist? Of course I do, but at a time like this, I think it's best for us to maintain some distance. What do you think, Brother Hoof Dragon? The sparrow chuckled as it turned toward the cow-headed beast. Well, we've known one another for a very long time. There's no need to. The cow-headed beast was making an attempt to mediate the situation, but its voice was abruptly cut off as a burst of enormous power surged out of the chain in its mouth, severely injuring its mouth in the process. The cow-headed beast let loose an agonized howl, thereby releasing the purplish-golden chain, and when it hurriedly tried to bite onto the chain again, a mountainous crimson seal suddenly appeared above its head without any warning, then descended from above with countless golden and silver runes surging around it. The cow-headed beast was extremely alarmed by this, and it was too late for it to evade, so it could only let loose a thunderous roar as its body swelled to several times its original size, following which it thrust its inky black front hooves toward the giant crimson seal. In the instant its hooves came into contact with the massive seal, they immediately exploded amid an earth-shattering boom, and its body and soul were all destroyed amid a flash of bright crimson light. Right at this moment, Ma Liang appeared above the giant seal with a cold smile on his face, amid a burst of spatial fluctuations. At the same time, the black-robed young man that was being bound by the purplish-golden chains abruptly vanished. "Impossible! How did you break free from the chains of laws?" The giant sparrow screeched in a horrified manner upon seeing this, then hurriedly released the chain caught between its beak before flying back in retreat as a streak of gray light, only to be struck by the giant black-furred palm amid a dull thump. The giant sparrow was caught completely off guard and was sent somersaulting through the air over 10 times before finally just barely managing to steady itself. Meanwhile, the deer-headed beast was slowly withdrawing its palm, with a sinister look on its face. The giant sparrow shook its own head vigorously to shake off the dizziness from the unexpected blow before yelling, "Yang deer, have you gone insane? Wait, I get it now. You already surrendered to him and tampered with the chains of laws. It's too late for you to make this realization now," the deer-headed beast said with a cold smile. The giant sparrow's heart immediately sank upon seeing this, and it slowly retreated in a panicked manner as it said in a frantic voice, "I'm willing to subject to you and become your spirit servant as long as you spare my life. It's too late. I only have one true soul pill, and I can only take one person back to the true immortal realm with me. Yang deer, seeing as you've subjected yourself to me, your first order will be to kill this companion of yours. If you fail to do so and are killed instead, then I'll have to give the true immortal pill to the victor. Don't worry about me changing my mind. I just so happen to be in need of a servant to run my errands for me, and only the most powerful one among the three of you deserves to become my servant." Ma Liang chuckled coldly. Chapter 2406, Reemergence of the Small Vial. Yang Deer's expression changed drastically upon hearing this, while a flash of hope appeared in the giant sparrow's despairing eyes, and it turned toward its former companion with a bloodthirsty expression. After appraising one another for a short while, both of them let loose fierce roars, and Yang Deer swelled to over 100 times its original size, while a suit of earthy yellow armor that was riddled with sharp spikes appeared all over its body. Meanwhile, the giant sparrow flapped its wings, and the gray spirit flames burning all over its body surged toward Yang Deer as a storm of fire. Thus, a violent clash ensued, and Ma Liang looked on with a cold smile before vanishing into thin air along with the giant crimson seal beneath him. In the next instant, Ma Liang appeared at a certain area of the Thunder Continent, and he was inspecting his surroundings while holding a trembling dark green vial in his hand. The entire surrounding area was completely deserted, and after ascertaining this, a cold smile appeared on Ma Liang's face as he flew away as a streak of golden light. Close to a day later, he descended onto an ordinary-looking mountain before tossing the small green vial in his hand forward. The vial immediately tipped itself over to release a burst of light, from within which an imposing figure emerged. This figure was none other than Yang Deer, but his body was riddled with wounds, and his suit of armor was also severely damaged. "As expected, you were the one who survived," Ma Liang said in an indifferent manner. Yang Deer pays his respects to his master. The deer-headed beast immediately knelt down on one knee. "You're very courageous and you know what's good for you. If you hadn't assisted me back there, it wouldn't have been so easy for me to escape from that predicament. Rest assured, you did everything I asked, so I'll compensate you as promised. I'll give you a true soul pill and take you to the true immortal realm. However, prior to that, you have to offer me part of your soul and sign a spirit servant contract first. I'll also take advantage of this opportunity to sever all of your ties with this realm," Ma Liang said in an expressionless manner. "Yes, master." Yang Deer only hesitated for a brief moment before opening its mouth to release a ball of green light, within which was a tiny deer-headed beast. "How fortunate for you. Once you sign the contract on this immortal spirit slip, you'll no longer be affected by the power of this realm, and you'll be able to ascend to the true immortal realm without any issues. In contrast, it'll take me countless years to refine this treasure again," Ma Liang said before opening his mouth to release a radiant golden scroll. "Open up your soul and don't resist. Otherwise, I can't guarantee your safety," Ma Liang said as he made a hand seal before pointing a finger at the golden scroll. In the next instant, countless golden seal text runes emerged from the scroll amid a burst of golden light, then surged into the ball of light and began to revolve around the miniature deer-headed beast. Yang Deer let loose an involuntary low roar as it threw its hands onto its head with a pained expression. It was as if there were countless things burrowing their way into its soul, and it immediately understood the purpose of the golden scroll, as well as the content of the spirit servant contract. Yang Deer carefully inspected the contract while enduring the agony, and it was quite pleased with the terms of the contract. As a spirit servant, he would naturally be required to do Ma Liang's bidding, but in the face of some orders that would pose a threat to its life, it could refuse to follow the order at a certain cost. Furthermore, the contract wasn't permanent, and there were some enclosed conditions that could allow it to discharge the contract. All of those conditions were very rigorous, but they didn't seem to be impossible to fulfill. Thus, after discovering that the terms of the contract were far more favorable than it had imagined, Yang Deer immediately opened up its own soul without any hesitation. At the same time, the miniature beast within the ball of light ceased its resistance, allowing the golden seal text runes to surge into its body. After that, Yang Deer shuddered before falling onto the ground in an unconscious state. Ma Liang swept a sleeve through the air in an unhurried manner to withdraw the golden scroll, and the ball of light containing the tiny beast flew back into Yang Deer's body. After a long while, Yang Deer rose to its feet again in a shaky manner. Its soul didn't appear to be any different from before, but it could sense an indescribable restrictive force intermingled within it. That was the contractual power of the golden scroll. After heaving an internal sigh, Yang Deer knelt down and kowtowed to Ma Liang, who remained still on the spot, as if he hadn't moved this entire time. "All right, seeing as the contract has been signed, it's time for me to fulfill my end of the agreement." As soon as his voice trailed off, a shimmering golden egg-sized bead appeared in front of Yang Deer amid a burst of spatial fluctuation. The bead was radiating bright golden light, and there were wisps of white qi revolving around it. Furthermore, it was releasing a sandalwood-like aroma, and just inhaling this scent immediately struck Yang Deer's soul with a sense of indescribable comfort, as if it were drifting into the heavens, and Yang Deer's eyes instantly lit up. "This is the true soul pill. You can take it now or take it after we return to the true immortal realm. If I were you, I would choose the latter option. This pill will significantly enhance your soul, but it'll also make you rejected by the power of laws in this realm, thereby significantly restricting your powers," Ma Liang said. Yang Deer hesitated momentarily before replying in a respectful manner. "In that case, I'll save it for later. That way, I'll be able to better assist you here, Master." Immediately thereafter, it opened its mouth to release a reddish-purple wooden box, which it carefully stowed the golden pill into. Ma Liang nodded with a pleased expression upon seeing this, then instructed, "I'm going to be resting in a treasure for now. Keep a lookout until I come out of seclusion." Yang Deer faltered slightly upon hearing this before immediately giving an affirmative response. Thus, Ma Liang rose up into the air as a ball of light, before disappearing into the small green vial up above in a flash. A burst of light swept over the surface of the small vial, and it suddenly plummeted from the heavens as if it had become impossibly heavy, plunging all the way down deep into the belly of the mountain before finally drawing to a halt. Yang Deer immediately made a hand seal upon seeing this, and yellow light flashed over its body, upon which it also disappeared into the ground below. Upon arriving beside the green vial, it quickly inspected its surroundings before taking a seat with its legs crossed. The space inside the small vial was slightly ravaged from the battle that had just taken place within it, and Ma Liang's brows furrowed slightly upon seeing this. He swept a sleeve through the air, and all of the traces of battle were instantly erased as if they had been nothing more than mere illusions. Immediately thereafter, he raised a hand, and a rainbow cloud instantly came descending from above. The cloud transformed into a shimmering futon that stopped near Ma Liang, and he sat down onto the futon before closing his eyes to inspect his own internal condition. "This is definitely not ideal. I was injured by the treasures detonated by those Jiao Kai beings, and those injuries were further exacerbated by the power of laws. It looks like I won't be able to recover without at least a few years of recuperation. It's a good thing that aside from that talisman, Master also bestowed that replica treasure upon me. The replica is nowhere near as effective as the actual treasure, but it'll be able to shorten the required recovery time to less than a tenth of what it otherwise would be," Ma Liang murmured to himself as he slowly reopened his eyes. After that, he made a hand seal before chanting an incantation, and the entire space shuddered slightly as a burst of green light appeared all around him, forming countless projections of spirit flowers and exotic plants that took up virtually every single inch of this entire space. All of a sudden, the entire area was filled with thriving spiritual qi, as if it had sprung to life. At this moment, Ma Liang's hand seals and chanting ceased, and he made a grabbing motion, upon which a small green vial projection appeared in his grasp before being tossed upward. "Let there be rain," Ma Liang yelled as he pointed a finger upward while golden light flashed around his body. Dark clouds quickly converged up above, and the vial projection immediately swelled to a diameter of over 1,000 feet before tipping itself over. Green liquid surged out of the massive opening of the vial, then descended from above as a bout of rain. As soon as this rain fell upon the flowers and plants in this space, they began to rapidly grow at a rate that was discernible even to the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, massive flowers and plants had filled the entire space. Furthermore, these plants had all become far more substantial, and they were giving off a strong medicinal aroma, as if they were actual medicinal plants rather than mere projections. Ma Liang was completely unsurprised to see this, and he switched to a different hand seal, upon which wisps of azure chi that were infused with medicinal aroma surged out of the surrounding plants and toward his body. He inhaled the rich medicinal aroma, then slowly closed his eyes again with azure chi all around him. Only then did the giant vial projection up above fade into nothingness. Chapter 2407, Reunion in the Human Race. Half a year later, the Inkisperate Holy Ark arrived at Deep Heaven City, and the humans and demons in the city immediately erupted into a frenzy. Not only did all of the elders in the city rush out to greet Han Li, they immediately notified Mo Jianli, who just so happened to be cultivating in seclusion near the city. After greeting the elders and allowing the human cultivators on the ark to choose to stay or leave, he remained on the ark alongside the cultivators of the small spirit sky who had chosen to stay, awaiting Mo Jianli's arrival. A day later, Han Li was chatting with Nangong Wan in the cabin of the ark when he suddenly rose to his feet with a smile and said, "Brother Mo is here. Come and meet him with me, Wanner." Nangong Wan had already heard of Mo Jianli from Han Li, and she smiled as she replied, "I'd be happy to meet fellow Taoist Mo Jianli." Thus, Han Li released a burst of azure light out of sleeve to sweep up both himself and Nangong Wan, then shot out of Ark's cabin as a ball of azure light. Moments later, Han Li and Nangong Wan appeared on the deck before casting their eyes toward the distance, where a streak of white light was approaching them at an incredible speed. After just a few flashes, the streak of light arrived above the ark, then faded to reveal Mo Jianli, who looked down at Han Li with a smile as he said, "It's been a while since we last met, Brother Han. How have you been?" "Thank you for keeping me on your mind, Brother Mo." Thankfully, I was able to complete the objective of my trip and was reunited with my Tao companion from the human world. "Wanner, come and greet Brother Mo," Han Li replied with a smile. "Oh, is this your Tao companion, Brother Han?" Mo Jianli asked with a smile. Nangong Wan pays her respects to Senior Mo Jianli. "I was trapped in the small spirit sky until recently, but I've heard many things about you from my Tao companion. I truly admire the work you've done as the supporting pillar of the human race," Nangong Wan said as she extended a respectful curtsy. "You're far too kind, Fairy Nangong. Please, there's no need for formalities. Fellow Taoist Han and I are very close friends, so you can refer to me as an equal from now on. If you don't mind, you can call me Brother Mo," Mo Jianli said with a wide smile. Nangong Wan was aware that Mo Jianli and Han Li did indeed share a close bond, so she complied with this request to refer to him as Brother Mo. Mo Jianli's smile widened even further upon hearing this, and he pulled out a silver jade box before offering it to Nangong Wan. "This is our first meeting, so I can't just let you go away empty-handed. I just so happen to have a set of 108 yin maiden needles in my possession. They're quite a rare top-grade treasure, and they'll be a perfect gift for you." Nangong Wan could tell that these yin maiden needles were indeed a very precious treasure, and she immediately offered her gratitude, then accepted the silver box before opening the lid to reveal 108 thin black needles, each of which was several inches in length. The needles were very thin and frail in appearance, but they were releasing wisps of glacial chi, and one would immediately be struck by a bone-chilling sensation upon appraising the needles with their spiritual sense. Nangong Wan instantly realized that this set of treasures was far more precious than she had anticipated, and she offered Mo Jianli her gratitude again before carefully stowing the jade box away. Meanwhile, Han Li looked on with a smile and didn't ask Nangong Wan to refuse Mo Jianli's present. "Brother Mo, let's talk in the cabin of the ark. During this trip, I went to the Blood Sky continent and learned many things. On top of that, I have two pieces of news, one good and one bad, to tell you," Han Li said as a serious look appeared on his face. Mo Jianli's heart stirred slightly upon hearing this, and he nodded in response. Thus, Han Li made an inviting hand gesture, and the trio made their way into the Ark's cabin. As soon as the three of them took a seat, Mo Jianli asked, "Can you disclose the two pieces of news you have for me now, Brother Han?" "Of course, which one would you like to listen to first?" Han Li asked with a smile. "I'll go with the good news first so my mood isn't soured right away. No matter how terrible the bad news is, at least I can be happy about the good news before hearing the bad news," Mo Jianli replied with a wry smile. "All right, the good news is that aside from rescuing Wanner from the small spirit sky, the other objective of my trip was to save a human fellow Taoist who had been trapped on the Blood Sky continent for many years. Not only has she been freed, she had also become a Grand Ascension stage being," Han Li said with a smile. Mo Jianli immediately rose to his feet with an ecstatic expression upon hearing this. "What? So that means our human race has another Grand Ascension cultivator. You're not playing a joke on me, are you?" "He, I wouldn't lie to you about something like this. Brother Mo, however, due to some reasons, including a need to consolidate her cultivation base, she'll be staying on the Blood Sky continent for a few more years before returning to our human race," Han Li replied. "Haha, our human race can certainly afford to wait a few more years for another Grand Ascension stage being. May I ask the name of this fellow Taoist? Is it someone I'm familiar with?" Mo Jianli asked. "Back when this fellow Taoist left our human race, she was already at the body integration stage. Her name is Ice Soul. I'm sure you would have heard of her," Han Li replied. "Ah, Fairy Ice Soul, I do indeed have some recollection of her. I recall that she's also an ascended cultivator, and fellow Taoist Ao and I once discussed her back when she reached the body integration stage. I didn't think that she would have also progressed to the Grand Ascension stage," Mo Jianli said as a reminiscent look flashed through his eyes. "Fellow Taoist Ice Soul shares some ties with me, and I was also quite surprised that she had reached the Grand Ascension stage. In any case, this is fantastic news for our human race," Han Li said with a smile. "Indeed, our human race has never had more than 2 Grand Ascension cultivators among its ranks at once. On top of that, you're one of the most powerful Grand Ascension stage beings in existence, and you can easily take on several other Grand Ascension cultivators on your own. It looks like it's about time our human race expanded its territory," Mo Jianli said with an elated expression. "I'm afraid this isn't a good time for territorial expansion," Han Li said as a grim look appeared on his face. Mo Jianli's brows furrowed slightly upon hearing this. "Oh, why is that? With our current power, the nearby foreign races are no match for us. What concerns do you have, Brother Han?" "This ties in with the piece of bad news I have," Han Li replied. Mo Jianli's heart jolted slightly upon hearing this. "Ah, I was too happy about the good news and forgot about the bad news. Is it something very serious?" "Serious is an understatement. This is something that could easily result in our entire human race being erased," Han Li replied with a wry smile. Mo Jianli's expression changed drastically upon hearing this. "What? It's that severe? What's going on?" "I didn't witness this myself, but I was informed of everything by the He Lion Trade Guild, and back when I was leaving the Blood Sky continent, the entire continent had been in a state of panic and chaos over this matter. Recently, what appears to be a true immortal arrived in our realm. Due to the severity of this matter, Han Li made no effort to conceal any details and gave Mo Jianli a comprehensive recount. After a while, Han Li finally concluded his story. "For now, I agreed to Ming Zun's proposal to form an alliance. If there really is a chance that we can defeat that true immortal, then I'll most likely have to get involved. Otherwise, if he seeks out our human race, our entire race will be in grave peril. Do you have any other ideas about this situation, Brother Mo?" Mo Jianli was already rooted to his seat, and only after a brief stunned silence did he reply, "It's incredible to think that a true immortal has appeared in our spirit realm. This is an extremely serious matter, so please afford me some time to think before I give you a response, Brother Han." "Of course, take your time, Brother Mo Wanner. Get someone to brew some spirit tea for us," Han Li said. "I'll brew some special tea from our small spirit sky myself for Brother Mo," Nangongwan replied in a gentle voice as she rose to her feet. Han Li nodded in response, and thus Nangongwan extended a slight curtsy toward Mo Jianli before departing in an elegant manner. Shortly thereafter, a flagon of elixir-like spirit tea was carried into the hall on a pristine white jade platter. Nangongwan poured a cup of tea each for Han Li and Mo Jianli, then returned to her seat with a smile. At this moment, A thought finally seemed to have occurred to Mo giantly, and he said, "Brother Han, I've identified an area of ambiguity, and I was wondering if the He Lion Trade Guild mentioned this to you." "What is it, Brother Mo?" Han Li prompted.